give people time to show up and everything. So we should be live. If you're out there, say something. We'll wait until we have someone in the house.
Checking in.
Yeah. So just want to give some people time to. Okay, I got the signal from my production sidekick that we are live. I don't see anyone say anything yet, so I just want to take a few minutes. See what's going on.
They're shy.
Yeah, I want to see what's going on Facebook first.
Yeah, I'll look and see.
Here we go. All right, so we got Susan saying hi to us. Thank you so much, Susan, for saying hi. All right. Well, maybe this is too early for folks. It doesn't matter. We're going to get this party started. So I'm of the school, whoever shows up is who is supposed to be here. We live in a world where you can watch things asynchronously. So I'm sure there will be a lot of you joining us later. And all right, here we go. The comments are coming in. There we go. Okay. I'm kind of haven't done this in a while. We got Darlene Nisi in the house. Thank you so much for being here. We have Andrew. Thank you so much for letting us know we are loud and clear. We have Mel Smith. We have my high school, one of my high school associates, Adria, in the house.
Adria.
I am very excited.
SWD in the house?
Actually, Adria, you have to let us know, was it SWD or was it Walker High? Because I went to 2 high schools. And I'm super excited for Courthouse Notes for being here. Really appreciate it. Love when you're here. Chad Coon says, love the books. Halfway to 83, 84. Can't wait to read 85, 86.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate, Chad, that you're reading 83, 84 first. You're going in a chronological order. So that's really fantastic. We have Carol Lee. I want to give a massive shout out to Roseanne Vanessa Warren. She's really been helping spread the word on this event as well as many others. And we're going to Susan.
Still waiting for the paperback.
Oh, paperback. I'll tell you when the paperback is going to be coming out in November. Yeah,
Okay.
paperback's going to be coming out in November. So
I love hardcovers.
not this November, next November.
Say.
Next November, on November 2022. So it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be it's not going to be a deluxe paperback like the last one where it had extra 30 pages of stuff. I'm adjusting little things in it just to kind of, if there's typos and things like that, adjusting those. So if you have them, email me. If you see a typo, please email me privately.
But you're like, basically, you've gotten enough this time. You don't need extras.
Yeah. What I might do though is I'm considering putting a few pages from book 3 in there. So that might be fun if if people are interested. Oh, this is a little shiny there. Ooh, much nicer. But I might do something where I have like 5 or 6 pages from book 3. So that might be kind of fun to give people an incentive to get the paperback. But mostly it's going to be about the same. I don't want to. I spent about 8 months, 9 months doing the expanded paperback before, and it was great. But it was because it was a new book, and there was a lot of people that didn't know me, and they saw the book and they're like, "Oh, okay, I'll talk to you now," or I can add to that story. Now people have kind of come forward, so it's been a pretty good ride now.
So before we get started, I do want to give a couple more shout outs. I got to give massive shout outs to Craig Garrett. I miss the ATL. I miss seeing you. I miss all the Prince events that you did and do. So you are missed, Craig. Zaire, it's always a pleasure to have
you. Zaire.
Hey, Zaire. How you doing, sir?
Yes, yes. And then let's see.
One of the scholars.
Yes. So, Duane, here's another question. Will you be releasing an audiobook?
Yes. An audiobook comes out November 1st of this year. It's going to be recorded by the same person that did the last one, which is Ron Butler. Ron Butler also did the audiobook for Morris Day. So if you've heard his voice on that, he's the same guy, but they're working on it right now. So yeah, I'm very excited about that because a lot of people have been asking about the audiobook.
Yes. We got to give massive shout outs to Michael Dean of the podcast on Prince. I hate saying that. I prefer Prince podcast, but we had
good, Mike Dean.
Yeah, so we got to say that. And also I want to give a shout out to Arlene Oak as well.
Arlene.
Andrea Colber and awesome narrator comments from
Agree. He's good.
Robin Marie, welcome.
Hey.
And this is I want to highlight this comment. Ooh, book 3 cannot because
the pressure's on.
I'm with you, Andrew. All right. So we're gonna get this conversation. First of all, thank you so much, Duane, for being here with us. And I have to make sure we can see everyone. And I also want to give a special shout out for Miss TLC for being here with us.
Of course. I am very honored to be here. We had such a great conversation the last time around the first book, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Yes.
Me too.
All right. And last but not least, one of my dearest and oldest Prince friends, Ricky Wyatt from Grown Folks Music.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Awesome. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is D'Angela Duff, and I do annual Prince symposia under Polished Solid. And we, all of us spoke except for Ricky, and it was Ivan. And unfortunately, Ivan can't join us this time because he had a personal issue, and Ricky couldn't join us last time because there was a family emergency, like an emergency that happened. So it's interesting how we're switching. But we first came together to talk about this book, which is Prince and the Purple Rain Era Studio Sessions, 1983 and 1984. Yes.
Now.
About 3 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about this bad boy, Prince and the Parade and Sign of the Times Era Studio Sessions, 1985 and 1986. I absolutely love this cover.
I love that picture.
But this is an amazing cover, Duane. So massive shouts out to Reverend.
Yes. Guys, I was going to say, Rev is the guy that he's done both covers. What happens, so you understand, is I'll find a picture, and he and I will bounce back and forth about what can go with it. And he just is brilliant when it comes to finding a way to blend all the elements to make it, I want to make it sort of an iconic cover. And he knocked it out of the park. A lot of you know Rev's work. Rev does so many different things for the Prince community. And I can't give enough love to this guy. He does the bookmarks for this as well. I see D had a bookmark. I don't have one with me. If you want to hold that up real quick. He does the bookmarks for these things. You got the book. He's just
I love that. You got the book.
You got the book.
Every time I see that, I sing the same song. It's so funny. Yeah, but that was Rev. Rev he's so good and a great friend and just so on top of all this stuff. I mean, every time I at first was thinking, I don't know how we can top the first cover because I really like the first cover. And then this one, I'm like, oh, I don't know what I was talking about. This second cover, I'm really happy with. I don't know what I'm going to do with the third cover though. So, but Rev is that guy, and we'll find a good shot. But the funny thing is, somebody showed me on the first shot there was somebody selling posters of the very first cover of the book without the Prince thing at the top in New York. They were selling posters on the street.
Oh my goodness!
Bootleg posters, wow. and I was like going, that was crazy. Somebody showed me a picture of this, and I was like, I wrote to the photographer just so he knew I have nothing to do with this, but it's kind of flattering for Rev to see people liking his work that much that they want to create a poster out of it. I think it'd be a cool T-shirt personally.
Me too. You know what? I've actually, when you chose that picture, I actually found the black and white photo, and I'm considering getting that blown up.
It's a good shot. The second shot is done. Yeah, the first shot is iconic. The second shot, Michael Putland, who passed away, I think, a year ago. He's a photographer that's done a bunch of work, but his work is great. I can't suggest finding these two people enough to get their work.
And then you included it in the book, like the actual black and white photo is
right. And the nice thing is, Rev went back and colored the image to match the guitar, to match the pants, everything, because he looked at color images from the same show, and he did the guitar the exact color, and so that's how he's one of these people that wants to make sure it gets it right, and I think that's great.
And you've really made it when in New York City they're selling something on the street. I mean, we just can't help but do that.
Exactly.
The New York City thing.
Nice.
Yes, that's actually mad respect, even though it might seem like disrespect. There actually are a couple of comments that are in the chat that I want you to address. Duane, real quick. Chad asks, where may we find the bookmarks? And then Susan says, love the bookmark. Do you still have them if I order them from your site?
Yes, the bookmarks are from the website. They are a special bonus that goes with people who are buying the book through the website, which the website is DuaneTudahl.com. And I try to get the books out as fast as possible, depending on how fast I can get them from the publisher. But I usually include bookmark, a form that has a certificate of authenticity that signed that says this is my signature on here, and you can get it personalized as well. So if you just want it signed, I can sign it. If you want to get it personalized, I can add a quote if you want, or I can add a lyric or whatever it is. I try to make sure if I'm signing it to somebody, I try to write a little bit of something for them so it makes it a little special. But the bookmark is one of the things that comes with it as somebody who purchases that. And if I do book signings out in the wild, I probably will bring some bookmarks with me then too.
So I know we're getting super ahead of ourselves, but I can't resist. So Patrick Courthouse Note says, yeah, about that third cover, I suggest lots of flowers.
That's funny.
Why? All right. So I'm trying to do double duty here. I'm a little slow because I haven't used this platform in a while, and my trigger finger isn't quick enough. But I want to start off the conversation, Duane, and talk a little bit about your process first before we get into a deep dive of the book. Now, for the first book, it took you almost 20 years to write this, right?
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was a long time, right?
Long beard after the end of it, yeah. One of ZZ Top
came out of the cave to look at the daylight. Like, I haven't seen day.
By the end, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, it took you 2 years to write a follow-up?
Well, what the deal was, when I was doing the first book, I was actually also compiling information for, other books as well. I basically try to cover as much of his entire career as I could in the 20 years. It was the last few years in that 20 that I realized I need to focus on 83, 84, which would be a full book in itself. And so I had a lot of the notes already. The 2 or 3 years it took to write this, because I started writing this sort of before the book came out, I had everything strung out. It was a matter of finding the interviews I needed, finding out who was willing to talk to me, looking through every interview out there that gets done by every podcast. The Prince community is rich with great podcasts. This one and Michael Dean and Chris Johnson. There's a lot of different people at the Funkatopia that are just fantastic. And they get great interviews.
Darling Nisi.
Exactly. You guys get all kinds of great interviews with people. Peach and Black. And there's so many great interviews and so many people in the Prince community that are willing to talk, and opinions that are helpful, because sometimes I'll hear something from somebody and go, oh, that makes me want to look into this. Or they'll say, oh, look at this music. And I go, oh, that's something I haven't heard. And I'll realize there's a thread here. So I start doing all that stuff and start putting the thing together with interviews. And I start realizing, what am I missing? Oftentimes I'm missing certain people. So I reach out to them. Several people you reach out to multiple times. You send books out, you ask if they're interested. Sometimes it's just they want us to answer a few questions. I've got a few people that just said, I'll answer 2 or 3 questions and that's it. And I'm like, okay, that's still fair.
Wow.
Still something to get.
You got 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's basically sometimes there's other people I'll talk to for 8 hours at a time. Al Magnoli and I talked for 8 hours the first time I talked to him. Susanna Melvoin, I've talked to her first time with talking to me was probably 7 or 8 hours, and we've had sessions like that. And she is so knowledgeable about this stuff because she was there, and I think that she's one of these people that kind of gets lost. Oh yeah, definitely. Dr. Funkenberry is another great one. Sorry, I can't name every podcast. I would love to. I actually do list them in the back of my book as much as possible because I want to make sure I shine as much light back on the community because it's great to be a small part of it. But like I was saying, Susanna Melvoin is one of these people that was there for a lot of the sessions, not just as Prince's fiance, but, singing background or inspiring certain songs. So it's this people that were around that's nice to hear from what it was like, having people talk about singing on a microphone with Prince. And you get those little stories and you're going, God, this is really fun. How can I incorporate that into this? And sometimes they fit well, and sometimes you kind of have to cram them in there a little bit more. But there's times that I love that. I love to have a story that's told by one person and another person and another person, and another person. And it's kind of like it builds. It kind of adds authenticity to a place that they were, and it gives you more perspectives. My goal on all this stuff is to get as many perspectives as possible. My goal actually is to have the truth be told. Mm-hmm. That's my goal. The way to do that is often through getting as many perspectives as possible, getting the people talking. And sometimes they contradict, and sometimes memories fade like a dream. I try to remember what I had for lunch 30 years ago. It's very difficult. Sometimes the people that worked with him least had the best memories because they only worked 2 or 3 sessions.
Right.
And they can say, oh, I remember that we had, this for lunch and he did this song. Whereas if you worked with him for 2 years, 3 years, it's sort of, no sleep. It sort of blends into one big,
Was it anybody that you wanted to hear from that you couldn't get?
Yes. Lots. I wanted to talk to Sheila. Sheila was big on my list to talk to. And she was not, I've worked with Sheila. I know Sheila. But it didn't work out. And luckily she did an autobiography and she's done many interviews. So I was able to use quotes from her. I want to make sure she's very represented in it. Miko was somebody I really want to talk to. I still hope to.
He doesn't do as much.
I know he does. I hope he does a podcast with somebody. I would love to see him. Hey, Stephanie. I want to see Miko do, if Miko would do one of these shows or with somebody that he's friends with. He's got so much to say, and I feel bad that he's not represented as much as he could be, because he's got a voice.
And what's interesting though, how you brought up the point that not everyone is going to remember every little detail, but there have been so many biological studies done that do connect that the sense of sound, and when you hear a song, it actually does awaken so many other memories and it triggers so much within you. So that's actually the interesting part of all this, is that we have the evidence of what was the result of so many of these sessions. And with the people that were there, I'm sure when they're re-listening to each of the songs, that's what does trigger a lot of the memories. And sometimes they do remember like minute details of, oh, this was the day that he wore his hair like this and he put this shirt on and he rolled his eyes at me or whatever,
Yeah. Peggy McCreary has things like that. And I've played a lot of these songs for people, the release songs. And sometimes when like the super deluxe things come out, I'm able to play some of these things for some of these people, and they go, oh, wait, I didn't remember that. Oh, yeah, that song was originally called this. And that day he came in the studio wearing a bandana around his leg and he was angry. And you're like going, oh, okay. Well, then you start to figure, why was he angry? Start to look back on that and see, oh, he was angry because of something that happened in Minneapolis that other people are talking about. So you start to put this giant tapestry together. And if I did everything, it'd be, a 2,000-page book. 700 pages, that'll throw your back out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the 700 pages, because I actually want to talk about something specifically.
Yes.
So with 1985 and 1986, but 1986 specifically is sort of the origin of what I call the Prince flood of 1987. A lot of the songs that were released in 1987 and Grown Folks Music, we did a podcast on this with Zaire and Harold, if I remember correctly. My memory is really bad, so I might have my people wrong, but the output for 1987 from Paisley Park was like tremendous. So going back to your book, I'm curious why Did you want, you could have done a book just on 1986. I'm sure you could have done just a book on 1985. Why did you decide to do both 1985 and 1986 as part one of the question? And part two of the question is, what did you leave out? Because I'm sure you left a lot of stuff out.
I'm trying to think what I left out. Let me think about that one for a second. The reason why I stopped at 86 is because there was a natural ending to the book. The book ends with, it's the last day of him not having the Sign of the Times band together. At the very end of the book is the first time the Sign of the Times band joins together in a party. And I thought that was kind of a nice conclusion. And it's also the end. I mentioned Susanna Melvoin before. She's sort of a big character in this book, kind of parallels her story to Prince, and she and Prince part ways at the end of the book. I wanted to, the first book is 2 years. This book I wanted to do 2 years because it made sense. If I went into 87, there's not really a conclusion that I want that was satisfying. This one ends sort of on a sad note, kind of like if you've seen Godfather 2. Godfather 2 doesn't end on an up note. You know, Michael's had Fredo shot and things like this. The end of Empire Strikes Back, which is the second movie, ends with Han Solo frozen in carbonite, and they're looking for him. So it's sometimes the second book is the launching pad for the third. And the nice thing about the third book, if it happens,
it will happen.
It better now that everyone's waiting for it.
Yes,
if I survive long enough. Yeah.
So in full disclosure, Duane, so the reason why I am so pro this book,
yes,
because I wanted this book, but the reason why I'm so pro about these two books is because I really want the third book to
continue the series. Exactly.
It's funny, Dee. I've known, just for full disclosure, also Dee and I have known each other for years, and we talk quite a bit, and she's always said that that's her favorite. You know, when Love Sexy is one.
We know.
Two things. That and Under the Cherry Moon is the best Prince movie. So those two things I know are and actually, you know what? Let me tell you, because of that, because Dee gave me some notes when I was writing the book, and one of the things I thought about when we talked about before was really emphasizing the some of the things about the colorization or colorized version or color version of Under the Cherry Moon. And so when I was writing that area, I was thinking specifically about you because I know that's a big thing for you. When I go into 87, 88, or even 87, 88, 89, I'm not sure which, I got to figure what's the story. There's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot to it. And the nice thing is the third book is very good. Andrew thinks the same thing. There you are. I knew you'd put that up. She's copying up the other ones. Dee's crazy. But no, the third book, there you are. See, Tarek. Hey, Tarek. Thanks for the review, by the way, on Tarek on Amazon. That was nice. And you too, Arlene. Geez. I'm getting old. My arms are dying here. I don't remember what I was saying now. What was I saying?
Well, first, Rebecca Blake spoke about the colorization of the movie.
Yeah,
now you're going into 88.
So going into 87, 88, I want to make sure I get the story right. I want to make sure that it's a solid story because that's the big thing. If it doesn't make sense to add 89, I don't want to add 89. If I don't have enough information about 89, I don't want to add 89. 88 ends with him firing all his managers. It's actually a really good ending to the story. Is literally the last night of 88 is him getting rid of Fargnoli, Cavallo, and Ruffalo, and that's pretty big, you know. So I thought, okay, that's a solid ending. But 88, 89 has Batman and it has other things like that. So you know, we'll see what happens.
You know, that's interesting that you have that concept of like when you write these books,
yeah,
like you're telling a story because a person could just get lost in just the years. You know, like not realizing that you actually have a narrative that's being told in addition to what's being told.
I think so, yeah. Sorry, didn't interrupt. Go ahead.
No. That's just a great concept of like you said, like you want to end it on either, you know, like the note that you did for this one, or with the first one, you ended it with I think the Purple Rain tour was kind of like in its infancy stages, like the first couple of months. So.
Well, I think sorry, I just wanted to say that when we had our last discussion, I know that we had touched on this, that, there's so many books about Prince. There's so many, interviews and things that have popped up, through the years, even way before he transitioned off of this planet. But a lot of them, unfortunately, are just written by generalized music journalists. And, it's very important that a lot of the scholastic work that's done now is done by people who have been following him, religiously for all these decades. And you were always one of those people. I mean, we had discussions even off the record last time about, everybody that we all know in common, and just through the years, like the evolution of the entire, fan community. But that is where that comes into play, is that you already know the story, what lines to connect to actually get to, 2016 or however long the series goes on for. But that's the important part, because you already know ahead. You're not just doing the research to see, well, I wonder what happened in Prince's career in 89 and 90 and 91. You already know where this is going. Right. And so you're able to take those steps to create the narrative, like as you're in the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney, by the way. And thank you, Ms. TLC. I think that some of us, by the way, this is what I wear when I write, because I cannot write. I've torn from here to here on both arms. I ice them down. I do ice them down every night, because I'm in physical therapy for my arms.
Wow.
It's crazy. But yeah, I remember, a lot of us remember the AOL chat rooms on Sunday nights, or things like that from back in the day. And the first time I met Dee, we sat there for 3 or 4 hours just about just history stuff. And it's nice when you can. I think what's cool about our community is when you meet people that know this stuff. You're already 75% beyond what everybody else knows, and you start talking about hidden songs and and albums that people forgot and things like that, and that's a joy to find the deep set of knowledge. The other thing is, and this is tricky, and Nisi said this to me one time, is by doing a book like this, I'm actually putting myself out there for extreme criticism, because it's easy to say he recorded this song in June of '87. It's much more difficult to say he recorded the song on June 17th at 3:00, because there's some guy out there going, I saw him at the airport that day at 4:00. There's no way. And you know that you're going to get this, and you know you're going to be crushed. And so you the more accurate you try to be, the more likely you are to be wrong. I mean, that's you're basically eliminating all other options. This is the only other option. And there's times that I look at it and go, oh, okay, you're right. I kind of missed little details. But at the most part, you try to make the first time I put the book out, it's almost like the peer review. It's like, okay, come at me. Come on. And I can defend most of it. But if there's something drastically wrong, let me know, because I want to make sure it's right. I don't consider it a historic book, but in a way, I guess it is. And people are going to be looking at it and going, okay. And I think what's fun is being able to get the voices of people who were there out there. And in many ways, this isn't just a book about Prince. It's about the people that Prince wanted to have around him, and the people who were allowed in the room at the time, because it's a closed room. It's an invite only place. And if you were in the room, you were invited in the room. If you were not in the room, you were not invited. And if you had a function, you were there. If you did not, you were removed immediately. So it's kind of nice to hear from the people who were sitting there next to him the whole time. That's, we all wanted to be in the recording studio with him. And so I read a book about the Beatles years ago. And I thought this would be really cool to do with Prince. And that's where it came from. So, yeah.
Well, to your point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Angela.
This is a really great question from Michael Dean. So the problem with doing this live is that the questions are coming in, and I need to kind of catch them when they come in. Otherwise, I can't put them on the screen. So unfortunately, I'll be interrupting us, especially when a really good question like this comes up. So Michael Dean asks, any takeaways from readers' reactions that may impact how you do the next book?
Mostly no. I mean, yeah, I guess there in some ways people have said what they like and what they don't like. I'd say 99% of the comments have been very positive. So it isn't really. It's more of keep doing what you're doing. There's some that say, can you add these people or these voices? And I try to do that. Or here's a person you might not know, you might want to talk to them. So that is influenced, I guess, if that's the case. I don't know if anything's really kind of drastically, because I've kind of presented this as I feel it should be. The thing is, I welcome other people who want to write these kind of books. I mean, in fact, I've said this before. There's eras I don't know as much about, that if somebody has the dates and the information, I would co-author something with somebody. If somebody has something from the 90s or beyond the Warner years, and they say, you know what, I have all the recording dates for this year or two, let's work on this together, I'd be totally game to that, because I think he's got such a great catalog, and I would love to see a best of album of his post Warner stuff come out. You know, like the hits and B-sides come out for, you know, post Warner stuff would be great, because I think
still believe it will. We'll see.
I hope so too. But that would be really, to me, that'd be a great album. You know, there's a lot. You know, throw a couple of rarities in there. I think what's fun is there's a lot of albums from that period that people haven't listened to. It's almost like getting a stack of outtakes, you know, at times, because they're like, oh, I haven't heard this.
Right.
Yeah. So you were saying, I'm sorry, you were saying earlier, you had a question.
Oh,
it was TLC.
Oh, no, I was saying, to your point, this is also just like a statement for the community at large, because I know that a lot of people tend to get their feathers ruffled about, like you said, specific details or stories, saying, well, that's not what I heard, and someone else told me this through the years or whatever. And the problem is, and I just want everyone to understand this, like, you're also dealing with someone like Prince, who was also, you know, evolving his stories and how he would represent things to different people. And so I think that, like you said, involving as many people as possible, telling their perspective, telling their side of the story, is a huge service to all of us and to music history at large. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to get so offended about, well, I think that this woman is saying this, but he told this other woman this. And it's like, but that was part of just his process as a man and as an artist and a creative and a Gemini, you know. So it's important to kind of take all that into account. And I think there's also this larger narrative that people love to adhere to, that none of this would have been said if he was here and people weren't talking before. But a lot of that is untrue, because, you know, for people like us who have been there and who have been reading and researching, listening to these interviews from way before 2016, a lot of the seeds of these stories were always there. You know, I was always looking back and to try to connect the dots myself with different interviews and books that had been written, you know, decades ago. And there was always little pieces of what we now know that were out there at the time. So for everyone to always say, like, no one spoke when he was here and no one would even dare say any of these things, and it's like, no, a lot of this stuff was discussed prior. You know, now we just have people like yourself and like so many people who are creating these podcasts and creating, of course, D'Angelo with the symposiums. Like, now people have deeper contextual conversations about it. Right. But this is not something that everyone's just, you know, in the lands of make-believe, just making up everything as they go now.
And, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely add one thing to it. Is sometimes these things, and I'll let you talk in a second, but sometimes when the people talk, it helps me understand what questions to ask. You know, if I hear an interview by one of you guys on somewhere, I go, oh, I should ask this question because they mentioned this person, and to seek out that person, seek out the editor of the movie, seek out those things, to ask the actual people who would know, because there's a lot of things that were apocryphal, and you go, I go back to the original. People say, is that accurate? And they said, well, no, not really. That's the story that's been told, but it's shifted over time, and stories do shift over time. That's just, you know, that. Go ahead. No,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, because when you brought up the apocryphal stories, the comment that you made about Susanna Hoffs, like when they actually met, because you put the details together to say, well, it doesn't make sense that they would have actually met on the plane that day because they were touring. Like, that's what we need you for. Those are wonderful insights, because yes, those stories may have been passed down as urban legend, you know, for decades. And when you start to actually sit there and connect the dots, it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. It wouldn't have happened on that day.
And it's kind of fun to see sometimes where the song comes after a certain event and you go, oh, some of the lyrics may reflect. And again, we're all interpreting his lyrics. Who knows? But you can see certain things in like It Bees Like That sometimes. And you go, oh, that's right after he's breaking up with the band and he's singing about a breakup. So you can think, well, this guy's sort of his, and a lot of people have said his lyrics are his journal. And I wasn't there. All I can do is read what I read, listen to what I hear, and contextualize as much as possible. I'm one of these people that says, read other people's books, read the people's who were there, Sheila's books, read, whatever book you can if you're interested in that stuff, and they're fun. I mean, you'll get little details, but having a story told by 50 people, and my goal in this stuff is really to back the hell off and just let the people talk. And if I can just write as little as possible, I'm the glue that's sort of holding these things together.
You're the vessel connecting it all.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm the big vessel, but a 700-page vessel.
Yes. One thing I think is important to point out in this conversation we're having right now are the copious notes that you have in the back of the book, where you cite every single quote that you've been given. I mean, this is so important, and it's sometimes missing from other books. And excuse me, what I do is not only do I have a hardback, I also have the Kindle. And what's really great about the Kindle is that you can click on the number and immediately find out where that came from and do further research. So I am super grateful for that level of detail that you have in both of these books.
Yeah, I say look it up. Read some of these other articles. Give some of the other authors love. My thought is I didn't do all these interviews. I did a good share of them, and everyone that I didn't do, I try to cite. I'm not just try to cite. I make sure I cite, and give you a link to go see it or listen to it, because I want you guys to hear the podcast. I want you guys to read the articles. Other people have done. I want you guys to go to Prince Vault. Boy, do I want you guys to go to Prince Vault. Prince Vault is like the place. And I tell everybody, and other authors get mad, I think, at this, but every author uses Prince Vault. The estate uses Prince Vault. Everybody who says they don't are not telling you the truth, because it is where that is.
Encyclopedia, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Prince Vault, and the people that do it are great people. They helped with this book. They help with other books for free. They do this stuff, and they're fact checkers, and they try to get everything as accurate as possible. It's to me, when people write a book and don't thank them, you're missing a big chunk of research, because I guarantee they've used it, because I have, and even though I have a compendium of tons of information, and that they end up changing theirs after my book comes out, it's still, I use them, and I get so much just context from them. So I if you don't know them, go there.
Yes.
What is Tarek saying?
Yeah, princevault.com.
Yeah. I also wonder how the 8780 book plays out as far as documentation, where the Paisley Park work orders is extensive as details before. That's another thing. Is I've talked to some of the engineers, and they've had work orders, which is helpful. But there will be some places that I'm like going, okay, the further they get into that, the less I have directly. And sometimes I don't want to make things vague, and when I do have to do it now, I'll write likely or probably, at the top of the thing, so that people know that sometimes I have a date, but I don't know exactly when it is, but I say that, exactly, Edgar is the source.
So let me ask you, what did that make it easier doing the first two books, that the fact that like a lot of those sessions were sunset sounds, so like
Yes.
there were logs? Well,
yes.
I think whereas because I even thought about that, like if you were to do a post 86 book, that would be kind of difficult, because a lot of stuff was done at Paisley Park or home studios, so logs aren't really there.
Yeah, and we have some. I mean, back when we were doing this stuff, when we were doing, I used to work for Uptown and Pierre Nelson, and who was also one of the great scholars out there with this stuff. And I keep in touch with him on this, and he helped with this. Prince Vault is our version of Google, exactly. It's difficult. It's more tricky to do the early years and some of the later years, because at Paisley Park, he had this up. But we have talked to engineers. We have gotten work orders from people. We have dozens of work orders and dates from the engineers, Eddie Miller and people like that have worked there, that are able to say, here's the dates I worked. And people that were in these symposia, that those kind of people have some documentation, because they always had to submit dates of when they worked. And sometimes they keep this stuff. And that's infinitely helpful, because you want to make sure you're able to put this in context. What do we got here? Let's see. Okay. Well, those are my thoughts too. So Stephanie, I'll read that for you if you're listening. It would be nice if the next two books would be 80 through 82, Dirty Mind, Controversy 1999 era, and 87, 89 would be Love Seat, and and Batman era. That would be his. The Love Seat would be his pants from Diamonds and Pearls. That would round out. That's my goal. I really would like to make the 80s kind of have it one big thing done. So I'm toying with the idea of starting in 80 because it's a really good start for 80. You get Dirty Mind coming out, but the tricky part is because of the titles of the books. That would now be, if I do the 87 or 89, it'd be Prince and the Black Album, Love Sexy, and Batman albums. It's studio sessions. It's like title doesn't roll off the tongue.
It doesn't flow. There's not that natural connector.
And
but the Black Album, Love Sexy sessions flows.
So then the first one would be what? It wouldn't be the Dirty Mind sessions because it's the release of Dirty Mind. Because I think that happened right after 80. But the release of Dirty Mind Controversy in 1999 and the time, and so there's a lot to
Vanity. Triple threat.
Make the cover just kind of fold out.
Nod to next year's.
I have a question. Over the years, I've seen Prince bios get better. I know. So you mentioned accuracy, like in the, when like in '84, when I think Purple Rain say was blowing up. That's when we started to see these little, Prince bios, like 150-page books, so on. And then over the years, they got better. And so I think they got better because a lot of it was people just weren't available. I mean, like you said, people weren't making themselves available to kind of talk about things, whether that's contract obligations or say what have you. And then even in that mid to late 90s, early like 2000 era, there were some, tidbits of information given out. Do you find when you reach out now that people are more willing to share their experiences? Because I gather that let's say you were to do Dirty Mind Controversy, like 1999 sessions thing, you'd have to talk to some like specific people who right now, we really don't hear a lot from. And so do you think that they would kind of open themselves up to kind of doing that? Because that would be imperative to make sure that it's accurate.
I think that as this goes along, it starts to snowball. The first book, when it came out, people said, "Oh, I would like to be involved with this." And I think they start to realize that if the story's going to be told, they'd like to be part of it. For the most part, people have been very, very agreeable and very open. And I think my lucky stars that the timing of talking to some of these people has been very helpful, because sometimes you can get somebody who's got a book coming out and they'll talk to you more. Or they'll have an album coming out and they'll talk to you. Or like lately, Morris Day's been talking because of the re-release of the First Time album, which is a great album. So he's been talking about this, and Jimmy Jam just did a long talk with Dr. Funkenberry, and that was great. And Morris did a really great session with Questlove. So you're getting more of these people talking. So if I can't talk to them personally, a lot of them are leaving a giant footprint of stuff they've said. It is tricky because there's some people that go, "Who the hell are you? And why are you doing?" And I get that. Who the hell am I? And when I came out with the first book, I got a lot of that, a lot of door slams. And then the first people I started talking to, Peggy McCreary and some of the people at Sunset Sound and Apollonia and people like that, and doors just started opening as they went along. And once the book came out, people said, "Okay, I see what it is, and I see it's not insulting." And then the front of the book, there's a lot of comments by people that say, people who were there saying this book is accurate. This book is, Bob Cavallo said this is the most accurate. This is the first time he's seen Prince they recognized, that he knew. And I thought that kind of stuff is, when you get the people that were there saying, that's something nice. I like that. So I want to make sure people understand what they feel. Is there going to be controversy and things people don't agree with? Yeah, of course. There's going to be, even in your family, when you're telling stories about what happened to your kids, I remember this, and your sister's like, "No way, that didn't happen." And right. So, you're always going to have that. And so I try to also put that in, saying, Sheila says this, Jesse says this. I don't know. I wasn't there. They were. You should really respect them. And who the hell am I?
And everyone has their personal relationship with somebody, and that actually, it helps and hurts. But like I said before, I still want to hear them all and kind of come to that conclusion for myself. And I feel like everyone just needs to approach all of this scholastic work that's been done with an open mind. You should come to the table with gratitude that we have so much to study, and that we all do admire an artist that has impacted the industry and music history in such a monumental way. And that's what you should be grateful for. The fact that he had these very personal relationships with a wide variety of people, and their takeaway from it may be, like you said, the same as you may have a different take on how your sister said something to you and she said something to your mom. And, there's always going to be some disagreements in the way that something was put forth. But the fact that you have access to these people, and just a side note with that, I feel like now, because of their age, I think that a lot of people are also in a place where they're revisiting, their own personal histories, especially with what the world's gone through with being under lockdown and the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people are starting to come to the table and revisit their own personal histories, their legacies, their memories. Perhaps they're going through storage. They're opening up, photo albums. They're thinking about writing memoirs if there were somebody who, was a public figure. And I think that a lot of people now are starting to put pieces together therapeutically for themselves. That maybe they went through a particular situation with Prince and didn't see it that way when they were going through it. And now, perhaps through actual behavioral therapy or speaking to an analyst, now they've gotten to the point that they say, you know what, I think that this is why we didn't see eye to eye on this. And people like Jill Jones, like, she's very helpful. I know that's D'Angela's girl as well, because she's very philosophical, and she's very detailed in the way that she'll address things that she'll admit herself she looked at a different way years prior. And it's like, now that I've stepped back and I've grown up as a woman, and now I look and I see that I didn't like this or that. And that's just the natural evolution of being a human being. And I hope you're absolutely right. Mind about that.
You're absolutely. I think the nice thing is, as we're going along, and somebody mentioned this earlier, is as we're going along, the books are getting more detailed. Not just mine, but others. Because you almost have to, you can't not be. If you start writing vague things, people go, yeah, well, I know that. People want to know more. And as we start to, hone in on this stuff, people want to know even more details. So every rabbit hole people want to go down. And that's kind of fun, because it makes the truth come out more. They can't be as vague about things. And I think I don't want to know. I mean, I do want to know the three ways and stuff like that, but that doesn't something I want to put in my book. And it's always entertaining to hear, but it's not something I want to put in my book. It's my thought is my books are more about the sessions and what went into it from his life that influenced the sessions. Sometimes it's dating, sometimes a little perspective about how much he was dating or who he was dating or why, or, whatever. I want to know those things, because I at the core of it is Prince, and at the core of that is he's a songwriter, and he made music. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that with all these different tangents that sometimes done.
Thank you.
There's people that can write. There's people that can write things about his influence on this community, this community. I love reading that stuff. That's not what I'm writing. I'm writing about his studio sessions and how his life and the people around him influenced the studio sessions. Right. That to me is go ahead, sorry, Ricky.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask, is there interest from you? Because I know to do this, first of all, so you have to be a fan, and so I know that I guess you've done two books, kind of with covering two periods that are very dear,
sure, to
most Prince fans, especially those that grew up during that period. I was wondering personally, is there a part of you that kind of wants to dive and get deep into like the diamonds and pearls symbol, gold experience, that stuff era? Because some Prince fans came in late, and so
I say this to everybody. I don't care when people came into the party. There's people that say,
"Oh yeah, me neither."
I had somebody tell me recently that Emancipation was their Purple Rain, because they were young and they came in and that was their, and I was like, wow, that's fascinating to hear, because to me, Purple Rain is my Purple Rain, because that was when I grew up. And people tell me musicology changed my life, I'm going, wow, or I just thought we hung out with somebody at the last thing who didn't start liking Prince like we do until after Prince passed away, and that somebody was mad at them for liking them. I'm like going, I don't care what time you got to the party. Welcome to the party. Enjoy the things that are here. We got great bean dip. Take a, and
man, if only we could all be that way. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
it doesn't make any sense to
What we
battle
have to do now
error
is
is
we have
better
to.
and-
We're a bunch of old geezers in many ways. We have to make sure the next generation, our children, our nieces and nephews, understand how important this is. If we don't, we risk Prince dying again. And that's
Man, you know,
sad to say that, but it's really important that we make
Yeah,
sure
good point.
that my daughter, who's 11, understands the importance of Prince. I mean, she does. She sees the shelves in the house over there or there. I'm
and you know,
backwards.
that's a good point, because I have, you know, come across some Prince fans who came in, you know, with 3121 was their favorite or something, and I've seen other Prince fans, you know, like on social media and other platforms, like vilify somebody for liking something post a certain era, when instead of just engaging them, like, oh well, if you like this, then you should go back and check this out or that out. I think oftentimes. Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the nice thing about what and I've done it. There's some people is we got to experience Prince in real time. We got a year to soak in his album, absorb it, the release of singles, the tours. It became sort of in our DNA. So I can associate certain parts of my dating history, where I lived, with the albums that came out. You know, I remember who I was dating when Under the Cherry Moon came out. I remember, you know, so I associate those things. So it's a big part of, like so many people say, it's the soundtrack to your life. People that come new are given a stack of 40 CDs and said, here. And I think that's cool, but it's overwhelming to get that. And you kind of, oh God, Jughead.
Somebody's let's go crazy. Well, that's
funny.
Pushing it.
Yeah, that's funny. Good day, sir. But
I know, but it is though. Seriously, I mean,
somebody's gonna write a thing about Jughead's not so bad, and
yeah.
You know what?
Well, there was the presentation at the symposium recently.
See, but what does this one say?
I want to cut in. There's a couple of questions because I have to keep going back and forth.
Sure.
Questions I want to hit that I don't miss. I think this is an important one for you to answer, and then I have another one from the audience that I want to before we go forward. So,
as you want to read that loud.
Yeah, Carolee says, as you're keeping your writer work separate from your work for the estate, you obviously come across info you have to exclude from your book, but then the estate might decide to bring out a super deluxe edition covering those emissions. Will the book then be updated? It's an awkward situation, and it'd benefit the estate too to let you include all the info they found too.
Okay. Multiple parts in this question. First off, I do make sure I keep my writing and my work with the estate two separate things. That's my agreement with them. And I've made that clear before, and I'll always say that. I'm trying to think what the rest of the question was. It
was just, it's literally just a question about, you know, how once you found out new information when you've already written the book, you know, in terms of like an expanded edition, can you actually include that?
Well, who's to say? Right now, my goal is to go forward. Once I got a book, I want to, do the paperback of it, and then I go forward. I don't want to keep going back and going, here's another version of the Purple Rain book.
Right.
I might eventually, when all the 80s are done, might say, okay, I've expanded all of them, because by that point, more super deluxes are going to come out, and more interviews and more things like that. And maybe I'll be able to do that. My goal is to not just do the 2 books that are out. It's to keep moving forward and maybe go back and reflect once that's done. But I don't have any plans to go back, and because there's all kinds of new stuff that's come out for the Purple Rain book already. And I'm like going, well, you know, I keep notes. I keep a sheet that's about, I think it's I want to say around 1,700 pages that is just quotes from podcasts and things like that that I add for future context. Interviews that I've gotten with people afterwards and going, oh, that would be great to put in there. So I try to do that stuff, but no plans yet to go back and redo what I just did.
So when you're at home, you just look like the Charlie Day, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme, where he's in front of the board with all your notes, just home alone, like in your office saying, but then I had this quote and then I had this.
It's crazy. As you know, there's just 1,000 directions you can go, and you can find, there's always a new interview out there every week and stuff like this. What is Michael Dean saying? Is there anything you discovered during the making of the book that surprised you, like some music, performance, or story? Some things where it was really helpful to me to be working on the book, and then I do some work for the estate, and we were doing the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe. So there were certain songs I was like, oh, I get to hear this now, and I get to work on this, and to go back and find out details about those songs, which it's all on the Super Deluxe thing, and that's really good. Oh God, Dorothy Parker, that's funny.
It is.
That's really
It is.
That's really funny.
Dorothy Parker.
Rich
But
Friends
is,
as
though.
well, I'm sure. I agree, Tarek. I agree. But I think that I've been really blessed to be able to do the liner notes for the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe and the 1999 Super Deluxe and things like that, and hopefully in the future some more. I mean, I have to admit, it's fun being able to write those liner notes and get little details like that. Those are the things that surprise me. The things that surprise me are more the comments from people. When I get to, there's quotes from people that I think are just fantastic, insightful, and let's see what. It's great seeing you, D'Angelo. Always doing. Thank you, Rodney. It's good seeing you. I wish I could have seen you more. I'm going to keep getting distracted. Everybody's a joker today. Everybody's got a comment.
I gotta bring it up because it's funny to me. It's just, and like, this is what's really fantastic about this platform is like we're having a conversation, and the reason why I really wanted to use StreamYard to do this is that when we do symposiums, sometimes it's a little too formal, and I really wanted this to be interactive.
Yes, great.
I'm grateful for the people who have showed up to be here with us. So I just want, and it's just funny. So I apologize.
It's inside jokes for our community. Like we get it when you bring up certain songs.
Yeah. I'm afraid of getting distracted, and I'm happy to be distracted. So I may need to get reeled back in sometimes when I see some of these things. It's very funny. Anyway, the biggest surprise is oftentimes comments. I can think of, there's certain things people say, oh, there's another comment coming. I guess read Dee's face is the opus. Nice. If I do write about Batman, I got to write about Arms of Orion. So that's another one I'd like to talk to is Sheena Easton. I'd love to talk to Sheena Easton. She does not. We reached out to her, try to get her, and she said she doesn't talk to people right now out of respect for Prince. And it's a fine line because I understand the respecting Prince, but there's also respecting his legacy, and there's adding. I've said this in some other interviews, but things people have said to me about the books are it gives you a chance to go back and listen to the songs again for the first time. You're all of a sudden hearing, oh, there's a recorder on this. Oh, I had no idea that's what that sound is. Or I hear this in the background, or whatever it is, and you find a way. You go back and put on the headphones and get on the little beanbag chair and just kind of do what you used to do back in the day of listening to songs. And I think that's something that I think is good. I do want to find Femi-Gia. I am actively looking for Femi-Gia. If anybody knows where Femi-Gia is, please let me know. Femi, I've been friends with Femi years ago, and we lost touch. And I'm eager. I just wrote 2 emails to where I hope you might be recently. So Femi's like the interview to do for 1989, and he would be a reason why if I'm not able to find him, I don't know what to do there. I will text you. Okay, was this Rodney? Who is this Rodney chap? He must be new to the community. I do not know him, but I like the cut of his jib.
So, Duane, I have a question. Oh, go ahead, TLC.
Oh, no, I was just going to say another point that people really should just take into consideration is that, we are blessed that we also admire an artist that had 40 years worth of work, and he had all these different eras and different evolutions within himself and, his concepts and his sounds. And unfortunately, he did work with different sets of people who may also have conflicting stories or not necessarily get along now where they're at in their lives. And I just also want people to understand that just in life in general, if you think about relationships that you have with someone, 20 years ago, and then your personal story may change because you're telling the story to someone different at a different time. So there's people that I think that have come forth, we're talking about loving every era and understanding that because of people's ages, they may have jumped in at different times. That's all wonderful. And I am a big supporter of that as well. You just have to understand that if someone perhaps started working with him in 96 or 2004 or 2010, they want to be a part of the conversation and the scene. And I'm open to that, but they may have gotten a different Prince at that time too. So he may have felt, you know, in 2004, discussing what happened in 88, he's telling the people that he's close with in 2004 that, you know, that story is fake and those people make things up and that's not what happened. And it's like, that doesn't necessarily negate what actually happened. That's still that person's truth. You just have to be open to that as well. Because there's a lot of people out here that, you know, I love everybody's perspectives. I love the witnessing that evolution that Prince had with different people. But I just don't want people to feel like, oh no, well, I spoke to someone that worked with him in 2011 and they said that all that stuff that you're hearing about 1984 is false. And it's like, yeah, but he may have said that to somebody in 2011 because he didn't also want to address what actually went on in certain relationships in 1984.
I'll give you a great example of that is I'm married now. I've been with my wife for 30 years. If I'm talking about my girlfriends before that, at the time I said, boy, you're the funniest, you're the, you know, whatever it is. As I grow up, I realize, oh wait, I found the person I want to be with. This is my story now. If, you know, 20, 30 years down the road, I may tell a different story again. That's how people are. And what people have come to me and said is Prince has come out and said, I don't agree with this person now, you know, 20 years later. I think Prince was one of these guys that didn't necessarily like looking back and would almost downplay Purple Rain, even though he made, you know, Paisley Park was built because of Purple Rain, he still would downplay that stuff. And he said, it's like being in third grade. You know, he said that about 1999. Okay, not to me. To me, 1999 is about 1999. It's great. Right. And that's about my college years because that's what I remember that, you know. So it's all perspective and you're going to, and also there's something in the book where Susan Rogers was talking about how Prince would also put people in competition. He would say, well, you know what, this guy's coming in, he's busting his butt. You know, he's in here 18 hours a day. What are you doing here? And so trying to, you know, and he'd tell this person this,
pitting them against each other.
Yeah. And you were saying earlier, as a man or as a musician or whatever, as a player too. I mean, he would say, this song's about you, baby. And the next one, this song's about you. And he may take elements and do that. It's our job sort of to put all these things together. I think Susan Rogers had said something one time that what we have now is an incomplete picture of Prince. And we're all all the interviews are putting pieces of little dust mites and different things, you know, things trying to form it. We'll never get it quite right. But it's the responsibility of people that are there to help us understand Prince if they want to. I mean, you hope they do. I think most people are very eager. PRN alumni I thank them in the back of both books, is Jackie Thompson and Hucky and everybody involved in PRN alumni are so good about getting the word out and making sure that people who were there get a chance to talk and get known. And also they also raise money for people that do the causes that Prince championed before, and to help out the people that used to work for Prince. People back then didn't make a lot of money. Right. Prince didn't pay a lot of people. That's a big part of this book. And it's part of why the revolution broke up in many ways. But it's something that is the PRN alumni, I can't say enough great things about. I really do what you can when they have fundraisers, when they have podcasts, when they have events. Sorry, headphones slipping. But do all those things that you can. I tell everybody, go see the bands that play, buy the books that are out there, buy the albums that these people do, listen to the podcasts, share as much time with these people as possible because they're willing to give you their time. And all of us, this all goes back to Prince. All of it goes back to Prince. And we all want to give back to what this guy gave to us. And it's one of the reasons I wrote the books, is because my thought is he gave me so much. He gave me, every mood I have has a song that correlates with that. If I'm happy, I got a song. If I'm upset, there's a song. If I'm angry at somebody, I hate you, but I love you. You know, and every complex confusion thing, I get something from that. And I feel like I owe him, even though, you know, I certainly have paid for a lot of the stuff when buying the albums. I still don't feel I've given enough. And so when I do the books, they're done completely out of love. And sort of, this is my way of thanking him in many ways. And a lot of people are talking, and everything that all of you guys do, everything, you know, nobody really makes money off this stuff. It's done out of love. And I think that's what the thing about this community is so cool, is we all have the same goal, which is getting this information out there. Sometimes people are like, they want to make sure they're the first to get it out there. I don't care where it comes from. I just want it out there. I'm happy that people are talking. I'm happy that
Having
people are communicating.
conversation.
Big conversation is right. A big purple conversation with a big gigantic family, big giant dysfunctional at times family. but that's part of the fun too. Is there's people I'm going, you know, I would never have an option to have sat and talked to you in my life, and yet I'm sitting talking to people that I'm like, either they were a hero of mine, or they've got information, or that they're people that like my stuff. You know, all this stuff. I have made so many friends. I look at my list of people that we're on a mission from God, exactly. But there's so many times I people in my chat room on Facebook, I know a lot of them. I know when they're sick. I know when they're hurting. I know when they've got diabetes issues, whatever it is, and we care. We know when somebody's dog is dying.
Mm-hmm.
It's a family, and so you care for people, and you want to make sure they're okay. And sometimes people say, you know, my brother's hurting, and so you do something quiet privately for that person, and not for praise, but you do it because this is family, and that's what your family does. So yeah, and family also argues. Family also argues and complains, and
Right.
dislikes.
Family
and
falls out and has drama.
Yeah, and that happens too. And there's a lot of drama, and I think the biggest thing for me I'm finding, and I'm sorry, is that our family is filled with people who can predict, are psychic, because they always know what Prince wanted. You know, that's the other thing that always gets me is, oh, Prince wouldn't want this. I'm sure there's a lot of things Prince wouldn't want. I don't know what they are, but there's always somebody that knows better than the rest of us. But
like you said, we have to continue to talk to make sure that he stays alive for future
and talk
generations.
Talk calmly. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah,
you know, that's the bottom line. Is there's no reason to be a jerk. We all agree on this shit. I'm sorry, on this stuff. We all like this stuff. We're all here because of this. You know, bring it down. Talk normal. Don't insult somebody right away. Wait for a few minutes and then insult them. You know, but seriously, I'm always shocked when somebody jumps into a room with "You're the most stupid person I've ever met," and I'm like, we agreed on 90% of the things.
Right.
Rick,
I'm
sorry.
You had a question?
Yeah. Did you find when you were talking with the individuals I know that spoke, did they speak objectively? And what I mean by that is that, you know, most people, when they're speaking about a situation that I know they were involved in their narrative, they're either going to be the hero and the victim, never the villain. And so I know with, you know, both books, there are stories like, you know, and it's I mean, you know, like we as like community have to come to grips that, I mean, you know, Prince had his ways. And so, but again, it takes two to make something work. It takes two to make something not work. And so, whereas the people speaking may be speaking of, well, you know, he did this to me and this. Well, do they ever speak from a point of, like what they do to him? Like, did you make him mad? Or did you do?
Right. I think that, I mean, I hope that people are objective. I hope they are. Human nature is to not be completely. Human nature is always, you're right. That's right. You're never going to be the villain in your own story, or rarely going to be the villain in your own story.
Right.
You know, unless, usually when people are like that, we sit there and marvel at their stories. Like, I can't believe you just said that. That said, there are some times when people say, you know what, I couldn't do that. I had to say, look, I can't do this, man. You know, and they stand up to him. Does that make them the villain? Probably not. Do people want to be involved in things beyond what they did? I don't know. I mean, I hope that people are being as honest as possible. I kind of look at it against other people's comments. I look at it on the dates. I look at, you know, somebody says I was involved in this. I look at the date. I look at when it was recorded. I talk to the people around. You know, I look at as much evidence as possible. It's tough at times because there's times I'm going, that's part of the big thing is making sure you tell the accurate stories, because there's always going to be some people that come in and say, you know what, well, here, there's a vacuum. I want to fill this. And so you hope that you're not adding, if you're trying to correct the mistakes in the stories, you hope you're not filling them with more mistakes. And that's a big goal. Most people have been pretty objective. I mean, there's times that people are, you know, say, I didn't do this, but I marveled at watching him do it. Or, you know, most people are saying, like, I think there was a comment, I want to say it's Bobby Z said something in the first book that he said, if you want to know what Prince can do, you he go in the studio by himself for 24 hours and he comes out with the beautiful ones. Mm-hmm. And that's really shining as much light on the man as possible, saying, look, none of us had anything to do with that. That's him. And I think that I think the other thing about Prince is he can do anything. And so anything people can say is going to be, yeah, well, he could do that. And why would he need this person? Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing that all of us go through. Well, why would he need this person? Well, he does wants people around. Some of his songs, he may be playing with a jam with everybody. And if you've been in a jam, you're feeding on everything. I'm not a musician, but I'm a comedian. And I would sit with comic friends and we'd riff on things and make jokes. And I didn't care where the joke came from. We were just working for the best punchline. Right. And I think that's what he had people around him. He was doing that. Granted, he's the decider. He was always the guy that would say, no matter what you brought to it, I can take this part. I may only take these notes and I'll shuffle them, but it's still his decision. I think people did influence, but I think that he was always the decider on some of this stuff. And I think that people are pretty honest. I'm hoping that they were as honest as I want. Yeah.
So go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, no, I was just going to add that. I mean, so, I'm sure, like you all mentioned, with years of like maturity and then reflection, as Jill looks back, I'm sure if he were around, he would probably look back at this differently, and it would be a different, perspective or answer to, well, Wendy, Lisa, and Bobby said this. What was your take on this moment at this time?
And
you know what I'm saying?
And he's done things like that. I mean, he said sometimes he could be a little bratty. I mean, that's bottom line.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
There was a time that he said that something about my first manager, whose name I don't remember. And you remember Owen's name,
right?
It's not like you're,
right.
I can't remember his name, but he's throwing shade at Susan Rogers, Susanna Melvoin. He's throwing shade at all these people. And I think that's just, that's him. And sometimes he doesn't want to have somebody else getting credit. And look at the credits on the albums. They're tough to, people get left out, people get compressed, and it's a big gray area, but you hope that you're getting these stories truthfully from people, because I think what's fun is hearing there's a Jill comes out with her stories and it's great. And then Susanna says things and you hear both of them talking about this session that they weren't getting along. And, it's frustrating. I can only imagine what it's like to read that after you've lived it. I imagine there's a certain amount of stress some people see when they look back on some of the stuff. Going, oh God, if I had to look back on somebody writing a book about my relationships back in college,
right.
I'd be like, oh,
right.
And so I think that's how this is sometimes. It's going to be that a little bit, but at the same time, it all goes back to the music, and you hopefully accept that it without Prince and without the music, this book, this conversation, this gathering would not have happened. And it is always going to eventually, he's the center, and everything else is spoke.
So I have a question from Michael Dean that I need to ask, because otherwise I can't see the comments because I'm holding on this one question. And this is actually a question that really should be asked at the end, but everyone's kind of responding to it. So I want to kind of handle it while everyone's kind of in the moment about it. So Welcome to America. What do you think about it, Duane? Was there any hesitation about it being released?
Wait, what's Welcome to America? I've been so focused on my book. I don't think it was a hesitation. It was it's exciting when the estates found a finished album. That's right now. It's like, okay, we want to know more about what Prince did. When you find a whole vein of stuff, you want to get that out there. And I think that the nice thing about this is since the past 5 years, somebody put a thing that listed what Prince put out in the last 5 years and what the estate has put out in the last 5 years. It's a long list of what the estate has done. And people are complaining, oh, they haven't gone out of the 80s, they're sticking to the 80s. Then they do something that's out, and people are going, oh, I can't believe they did that. You're never going to win.
You aren't. No, he didn't want this one out. It's like,
and you know what? I think there's a lot of things. He probably didn't want a lot of things.
I'm grateful.
The nice thing is I like the album. There's songs on this. Yes is one of my favorite songs from this era. I think it's a great song. 1,000 Light Years from Here It's a fantastic song. The lyrics are great. It's since I've been working on that, I worked on this album with the team. I've wanted to talk about this for a long time because it's such a cool project. It is his most political album. I just did this thing about Side of the Times, and everybody's like, Side of the Times is political. No, one song is political on Side of the Times. The rest is there's the title song. Somebody goes, "This is his deep political album." No, it's got that and Cross are the two real serious songs. The rest are about relationships or boinking, whatever it is. It's exactly and so exactly house quaking around. And what's fun to me is this album is sort of a room in a mansion we didn't really know about, and you get to go in there and you get to see what's there. And the artifacts on the wall and all this stuff. And you're going, wow, this is a whole nother thing. He came out with an album. This is the crazy thing about this guy is he's got so much work. There's whole chambers of music that we don't even know about. To find something that he had not only recorded, sequenced, and structured and got together and created not only an album, but an entire 2-year tour based on this thing, even though he didn't play much of it, was still, you want to look into that. The thing I can speak more deeply on is the concert. If you don't know, I was the archival producer and the editor of the Blu-ray. So it was fun to see how it's being received. It, to me, is probably the cleanest looking and best sounding release from the estate, with the exception maybe of Sign of the Times, which was shot on film and things like this. But the concert is a showcase of his band, which is tight. Shelby is a star in this thing. There's people in this thing that are just incredible. And the ending, if you haven't watched it, I tear up when he does More Than This. When he goes off the stage, he does this and just sinks into the stage and just going, it hits me.
It's poignant,
And what I did when I was putting this together is we went back to the original footage and found as many shots of him smiling, close-ups of his hand playing, goofing off with the band and having fun and seeing a personality of Prince. And I think that's what makes this an experience, because he's playing a lot of hits that we already know, and somewhat the tour itself is a greatest hits. So we try to find a concert that had the best variety of songs that he didn't always play, some covers and some interesting ways of doing this. Shelby singing Brown Skin is so good. I mean, it is so good. It affects you. But Elisa's great. Liv is great. And there's so many fun things. The fun thing to me is he starts off the concert by mentioning the song he's going to close the song with. He says, "More Than This, look at it again," because that's how he starts the show, with that comment. He's basically saying, this is how it's going to end. And I think that to me is fun. If you look at the set list that's with the deluxe box set, there's songs on there that he was going to do that didn't. And what's interesting is Prince is always changing, even live right there on the stage. He's just like, okay, let's not do this. Look at the end during the one of the encores. I think it's during Inglewood Swinging. He whispers in Shelby's ear, and you look at her face and go back into it, and you can see that she's going, oh, okay. And then she's going, I got to process. I got to change this up. And she starts singing another song, and it's like he's
on the fly. He wanted to keep everybody sharp
saying,
with that.
Saying, "You're right there," and he whispers to him, "You're doing this right now, and go." And you have to go. And there's a reason the people on stage with him have to be able to do that, or you won't be on stage with him the next night. And to see that, but watch that part again, because when he whispers to Shelby, you can see her look of going, "Oh crap, I've got 3 seconds," and then she starts going into the next thing. And man, when you see that kind of control this guy has on stage, what he did to me with those shows is he played an after show at the show. His 5 encores or whatever are all like after shows, and he gets the guitar solo and the bass solo with Ida, and oh my God, there's so much to this. But so I can speak to the concert a lot more than I can speak to the album, but I love the album, and I think the album is a profound statement of where he was at that time, about his views, and man, is that important now? I mean, it's powerful now. You look at his statement, he's thinking, crap, we haven't gotten any further than we want. We haven't achieved this, the things we want, and we kind of need a reminder sometimes. to go, oh, you're right. Even back then, that was important. So I'm glad it came out. Time wise, it couldn't have come out at a better time. Sometimes I think that Prince was so far ahead of the game that we're playing catch up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times in his career did he put like a line and then we go, oh, a year later go, that's what that meant. Open your heart, open your mind in the tour book of Purple Rain was the beginning of his next album. But yet he's just laying these seeds. And I think that's what he's doing there. And I think my guess is he probably would have come out with some of this stuff over time or revisited it. I don't know. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is connected to emotion. And I feel that, even what you just said, like changing the set list on a dime, he would admit that it just was a vibe of what he felt from that particular crowd, what he was in the mood for in the moment, which made him such a genius in that way that he was able to emote, but also empathize and feel what he was getting in both directions. And I, like on a personal level, I've just written stuff, that kind of tracked that genesis of where it evolved and where it started and his emotional roller coaster and how that pertains to like the actual human growth that everybody kind of experiences. And I feel that a lot of those elements that you see that were present in 1978 all the way up to 2016 never faltered. Like he always still had that connection with the audience, with us as the listeners, with the concert goers, and with these band members and with these people in his personal relationships in his life. And again, like this all is just connected to tracking the history and just making sure that all of this information is available for people to dive into deeper for themselves. And, you were saying before about the, corroboration of certain stories. And I feel that, as with anybody, like you said, again, on personal relationships, if there's somebody in your life that's always, telling you something, but then you check with other people and you're realizing after a while that it's like, I don't think that a lot of what you're saying is necessarily true, then perhaps you deal with them and you take everything with a grain of salt going forward. But in these cases, a lot of times, even if there's different, maybe ex-girlfriends that are saying that they saw things in a different way, a lot of times when you corroborate with different people that were there, you realize that actually both of them may be true in their own way. Because another thing that was brought up in the book is that, he used songs in a transactional way as well to kind of guide certain relationships. And I feel that his songs were like chess pieces and he was playing a game of chess with all of these collaborators and he was using them kind of in this strategic way sometimes to say, well, I'm going to pull this back out of the vault and use it with this person. And now I'm going to use it with that person. And that's why sometimes these disagreements occur where people will say, well, that song couldn't have been about you because it was actually made, 15 years prior. And I believe that perhaps there was something, though, about later relationships that triggered the memories of songs that he may have recorded in the past. So it could have been about this person 20 years ago, and it's about you right now. This is how I feel about you right now.
That's a great point. I want to address. I agree with you completely. But I want to address something somebody else just said. Back to the video. Sorry, you saw a lot of his face, and you saw a lot of human side, and it was sort of not the Prince he always tried to. I mean, you got that a little bit in certain things like the face down video and things like that. We saw Prince being goofy. I think this kind of showed him being playful, and you saw close up to the face was going. I love that stuff. And the other thing to remember about this concert is this was at the Forum, but there was only about less than 2,000 people there at this show. And that's crazy considering that the Forum holds, I want to say it's like 17,000 to 18,000. But he played a hell of a show. What he did was he played a great show for them. So they would go home and tell the people the next night, you got to go to this show. And they went. And he's not going to play a crappy show because the crappy crowd showed up. He's going to still play the way he does because he is the best. Was the best and always put on that show. And I think that's what that crowd got a great show. And now I think a lot of people can see what he could do even with a small crowd. That's a nightclub crowd almost, when you look at it like that. But yet he played his ass off. And, he could have done fewer solos or fewer encores, but he did like an 8-minute solo at the end of guitar and stuff like this. And went this big thing. And then after people were leaving, people had left. He came out and did the final song. So this is a guy that lived music and gave music. That was his gift, and that's what he gave to us as well. So I'm so glad that the DVD has come out, or Blu-ray has come out, and it's the first Blu-ray that I think that has come out from the estate Prince or the state of his concerts. I don't think there's been anything. This is, it was mixed by Chris James, who did an amazing job with what was there. He was one of Prince's engineers. I can't say enough. It's the people that worked on I mean, I was, like I said, I was just the archival producer. It was directed and produced by somebody else before them. But it's man, it's a great show.
And Andrew's comment that I just saw, like, yes, I think that he did feed off the audience, and that's why he would, adjust set lists. And that's why, with certain tours where there was a long stint in a particular place, if you were able to go to multiple shows, it was always worth it to do so. Right. Because you knew there was going to be a different show, and it was worth it.
Went to a bunch of different ones at the beginning of the tour, and they were different when they went to Madison Square Garden. That's just, the tour was different in different places. Yeah. She's busy policing all the different comments.
I do want to say, though, because I love it so much, there is a Sign of the Times Blu-ray. There's a Japanese Blu-ray.
Oh, it's great. Yes.
The German release. So
right.
I
would love to see that come out.
Right. It wasn't the estate release.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah. The state doesn't really own right now. Sign of the Times, from what I understand, is owned by several different places around the world.
Yeah.
I would love to see a 4K version of Sign of the Times, a real 4K version of it come out, not just blown up, but actually from the actual source. I hope one of my dreams is to have that.
Yeah, I know that the state didn't release the Sign of the Times Blu-ray, but it looks so darn good. And Sign of the Times was shot on film. I just want to stress how amazing the Sign of the Times Live is, because again, I'm trying
to listen to that more than the actual album.
No, I'm actually trying to get it to be the best live concert film ever over Talking Heads. So anytime I have an opportunity to say how amazing Sign of the Times Live is, I'm going to, until we can get that narrative switched. Sign of the Times being the best live concert literature ever.
I agree.
I agree. I agree. I have a question for you, Duane. Do you feel, when you're actually sitting there as a reader and you read all of this, information, and you start to realize that, Prince obviously had an obsessiveness about music, and that was the way that he definitely was processing emotions. That's the way he was perhaps just reacting to every little thing that went on in his life, or reacting to general news, or reacting to family situations. But at the same time, there is the level where if you're in the studio 24 hours a day, and, you're also traveling, and you're making sure that everybody's still mixing various mixes and, doing their rehearsals and whatnot. Do you feel, when you sit down and you take all of this in at once and you prepare this entire story, is your takeaway that perhaps there was too much? Do you feel that he didn't necessarily need to make, 27 mixes of every song? I know that, in the community, we've always joked that, amongst ourselves, there'll always be someone that wants to interrupt if you say, oh, I have this version of this. And it's like, do you have the one, though, where he added one extra word, or
where he coughed
at the beginning?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And now that you kind of step back and look at all of it in retrospect, do you feel that perhaps, what some other artists and musicians had said at the time, that he would have benefited from perhaps dialing it back a little bit and editing, and maybe not recording so many different versions of everything?
I would be the last person to tell Prince what to do.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would be, honestly, he has a vision, and he had a thought in his head, and this is what he wanted. Somebody said, can you imagine this album with this song on there? And I thought, well, no, I've kind of gotten used to the albums the way he's presented them. This is what I wanted. This is how I envisioned it. It's always fascinating that he has so many songs. I mean, that makes us as fans have something new all the time. I mean, there's always something comes out, and like you said, people are like, ooh, but did you have the one where he belched?
Right.
And here's jewelry.
Right.
And like, okay, or he's hear his chair squeaking. And you go back to the extra song, you go, I actually hear his chair squeaking.
Right.
I love that stuff. To me,
right.
And it does make it difficult, because when I'm writing this stuff, and I will tell, I'm writing things and I'm going, well, and then he did this, and somebody who's proofreading, and I had several people in the community proofreading the books, would say, well, actually there was an outtake that had without that. And I go, oh my God. And I know if it wasn't in there accurate, I would get torn apart. So it's like, okay, let's get that accurate like that.
But we love it. I know specifically for us. I just was always wondering, like, what people think on a general stage, because I feel that, unfortunately, as I'm trying to convert, you know, everybody that I know into becoming huge, you know, Prince admirers, I tend to hear the same thing from a lot of people, that it's just overwhelming. There's so much to dive into with him, you know, and I try to outline like the journey that I think everybody should take.
Yeah. I'll give you a great example of that. And somebody pointed this out in a review of the Sign of Times Super Deluxe, is the 3 CDs of, I want to make sure I get this fact right, but the 3 CDs that were of outtakes from the Sign of Times album, and that's not even all the outtakes, that's just what was on there, 3 CDs, is more than the Michael Jackson catalog for all of the 80s.
It is.
Entire 80s.
Yeah, it is.
Going, well, those are 3 outtakes of from this album. And it's going to be going, holy crap, this guy does a lot. I mean, not every song is great. You know, not every song is going to be Purple Rain or Gold. Some of them are going to be Rich Friends. You know, and you're going to have some of that stuff, or Purple and Gold and stuff like that. But he did so much. Odds are there's going to be some great ones and some less than great ones. But just because you say it's less than great, somebody else may like it up here. That's the other thing about this community, is there's songs that I go, boy, I don't even ever hear that song again. And I've heard it one too many times by hearing it once. But somebody else is going, that's my jam.
Right. That's my favorite song. I listen to it every morning.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you know, so it's like the interesting thing about Prince is the range he does, where it's funk, pop, country, you name it, you know, and it hits on everybody. And so there's going to be somebody that's okay. That's one. Okay.
That's for Ricky. That's not for me.
but there's songs that people, and there's songs on some of the albums that some people like and some don't like. But that's just, you know, part of the cool thing about him is there's going to be somewhere someone that likes this song, and that's you know, that's just the way it is. And
I have a question for you.
Yes, Ricky, can you hold that question?
Yeah,
so I have a question from Twitter from Eric Strove. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, from Amsterdam, and it relates to TLC's question. So that's the reason why I'm kind of butting in. It says, in the Love Sexy documentary, Little Richard had a good comment. A little bit of something beats a whole lot of nothing. When writing, did you ever have the feeling that in 85, 86, he could have achieved more if he would have controlled his output more?
Gosh. What songs would you eliminate?
Exactly. Right. It's hard.
I can think of more to add than take away.
I'm an addition thing in this. I'm not a subtractor when it comes to Prince. Add, multiply if you can. So I don't know what songs I would say, but I would look at them and say, okay, name me the 20 songs out of his 86 period that you think should go away forever. And I would say I disagree.
0.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
0.
So I think maybe he could have been more focused, but does that make it better? I don't know. Michael Jackson focused to the point where it was like every song was a gem on each album. Did that make a great album? I don't know. It made a good album, but after a while, I was like, okay, this is too polished. This is too clean. And to me, I kind of like the rugged rawness of some of the stuff that you'd hear mistakes. You'd hear, it was not always perfect, but I loved what Prince brought to it. You know, there's parts in on some of the things from Purple Rain where you could hear what was recorded at the 83 show, and you hear some things in the background that are not quite right, but they make the character of the song. And I like that. To me, it's you know, it's part of the fun to me. And yeah, was he perfect with everything? No. He could hide his mistakes very well, but you know, I think part of the fun to me is listening for things, and I don't think I'd eliminate anything.
Personally. You know, I would say that for those of us that kind of came up during that time, you know, we were gobbling up like everything. I mean, you know, every single had a B-side, and you were like anticipating it. So, like, we would have wanted more. You know, I get
mad when B-sides didn't have.
Right. Right. So I mean, you know, like it kind of became like expected. Like I remember when they released the like Another Level single with Boys and Girls on the flip, and I was just like, man,
I got that song. Yeah. Right? No, I know. I feel the same thing. I agree with it. To me, it was great getting a thing and going, she's always in my hair. What's that? Oh my gosh, that should have been on the album. and things like that. You're going, his B-sides are better than most people's A-sides.
Oh, absolutely.
Erotic City,
Yeah.
17 Days. She's Always in My Hair. You know, you just go,
How come you don't call me anymore? I mean, so many
How come
things.
you don't call me? It's a great song. And they're like going, how come these aren't on an album? And anybody else would have been like, I'm saving this for my single.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, I'm gonna hide this in this, you know, tuck this in my boot. You know, that's something. The maxi single. I there was times I go, okay, how many Get Off remixes can I have? There's times I'm going, okay, I got
if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have Violet the Organ Grinder. So
I get it.
I
know. And the flute instrumental. You know, I get, but at the same time, I'm going, I have to admit, I got lost on those after a while. I'm not saying they shouldn't be there. Again, I would never tell him what not to put out, but there's that was so many songs that are going, I can't even hear the difference in some of these things. And then
so we got spoiled.
Okay,
we got spoiled because we were used to coming up with B-sides. So like when that came out, you were probably fiending for some unreleased song or some song that wasn't going to be on the album, but you kept getting a different version of this particular song. And so you were just like, man, you know, you're shortchanging me.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, you know, perhaps, you know, we weren't suffering, of course, as the fan because we wanted as much as possible. But obviously people in the camp were frustrated, you know, like perhaps he should have focused on getting the Flesh out. You know, I adore the Flesh. You know, obviously Jill had a lot of issues with, you know, getting put to the side like over and over again. So there were times like that where it's like, well, perhaps you should have just kind of focused on this and gotten this out the door instead of, you know, releasing an extra version of this song where you know, dropped a beat like 1/2 second earlier than the one before it. But yeah.
I do have a question.
Flesh, so.
You spoke earlier about when you do these books, you tend to want to kind of tell a story, or like a narrative. And one of the things I have been saying for years, and I love that the book showcased both of them, was Prince's work ethic. And I've always felt that he's never gotten enough credit for his work ethic.
Big time.
And these books highlight just how great his work ethic was. Was that a surprise to you? I know, being a fan, like I'm sure, like said, you kind of went in knowing some things, but then when you get to the like detail of just how focused and how his work ethic was that surprising for you?
I think it was surprising and at times almost frustrating because the more he works, the more I have to work if I'm writing about it. So I was like, you're still on a job there, Duane. You got to get cracking.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this thing, and I'm always happy when there's more sessions. I want as many sessions. This book has, I think, about 100 more sessions than the first book, something like that. So there's a lot in there. But it is shocking to me about how much the guy did. And another story. I'm sorry if I end up telling similar stories, but there's one of my favorite stories is. Ashim, the photographer, told a story about he was a photographer for Prince in later periods. And he said what Prince would do is rehearse, and he'd in an arena, and he'd say, find me 5 places to shoot. And so Ashim would go and look for 5 different quick locations, light them or set them up. And Prince would walk off the stage for the rehearsal, say, okay, and stop at this one, take 50 shots, stop at that one, 50 shots. So then all of a sudden he's got 4 or 5 brand new photo shoots that he can use for different things. And he always looked perfect. He always looked immaculate. He'd have his different clothes on, but he'd always dressed like that so that each one of these things could be used to publicize him. So now he's already gotten, in the 10, 15 minutes he had between going to the stage and going to the bathroom, he now has several photo shoots.
Yeah.
That's how much he crammed in there. And then with the music, recording 2 or 3 songs in a day is insane because most people do that over weeks. You know, doing the drum sounds the first day, maybe a keyboard, somebody coming in and trying to teach the band. He didn't have any of that. It was like, it was all here. And if he gets it down, sometimes he would go in without a song. He'd do a beat and go, okay, how can I do this and expand? And it wouldn't go anywhere, or play the piano and it wouldn't expand, but he'd stop it and then go to the next one. But even sitting there, we've all heard him playing piano, even sitting there noodling on the piano is so cool hearing that. I mean, I could listen to a whole album of that.
I mean, one thing that I loved in the book was, I think it was Susan Rogers who described Prince's process for putting down the first 4 tracks to Parade. And how
Yeah,
that is an incredible story. And I love it that it's in the book so that people see that Prince did work really hard and that it wasn't magic. He worked his butt off, but that he wasn't a mere mortal. A lot of people I've never heard of anybody doing that before, ever. Having the whole 4 songs mapped out in your head.
Like a suite. I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then one by one lay down each, you know.
Yeah, and then doing all the drums, then doing
fresh
all the keyboards,
then all the bass.
Exactly. It's crazy when you think about having that 4 songs, and that was the beginning of it stayed that way. I mean, very little changed after that. That's how the album starts. He was working it like a job. He was, and it was phenomenal to know this. I mean, I would love to hear or see that process. Imagine sitting in the room watching this guy going, how's he starting? I don't hear it. And then you're going, see it starting to take shape.
Right.
Building it up and going, oh my God, you've got 4 separate songs, not just a suite of 4 parts. It's 4 specific separate songs with different lyrics and different everything.
Fresh tape. Damn.
I love that. I love that people are saying fresh tape now with all this stuff. Because Susan telling the story and Peggy McCurry telling these stories. These are the people that know this. They were sitting there with him. And there's certain people that band members know a lot about it because they toured with him. But engineers sat with him for 18, 19, 20 hours, sometimes 24 hours at a time. Bodyguards would sit with him all the time. It's like these people know what he's like when he was not being Prince. You know, when he's not being this iconic Prince. He was the guy who would get frustrated, get angry because he had to wait for the tape to rewind. Stuff like that. And you just sit and go, oh, okay, this guy had, we kind of, I think the sad thing is we've sort of deified him in many ways and made him so that he is infallible. I think what's nice is a lot of people talking about it now will explain that, yeah, this guy did have, you know, he was sad or he'd happy or he'd be hungry or he was human. And I think knowing that Prince always makes me feel lazy. That's funny. I thought about the same thing.
One of the things in your book, one of my favorite quotes from the book is from Alan Leeds, and he talks about how Prince made James Brown, the hardest man in show business, look lazy. Coming from Alan Leeds.
I know.
Right. Who was there?
Who was there? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And obviously, we know James Brown was not lazy. So
no. I agree.
Well, even just you brought up the story about, you know, with Susan's perspective of watching him lay down those 4 tracks off the opening of Parade. The fact that she also said, like, her and Peggy alone, like, listened to it back in the car and were just kind of speechless. And those, like you said, are the people who were there, who obviously were at an elite level in engineering and production, because obviously if Prince was trusting them to work with him and for so long, you know, they know what they're talking about, they know what they're doing musically. And for people like that to then step back and say, you know, we could have our ups and downs with him, we could be exhausted, we could be annoyed with him, but when you get to witness something like that, you're actually so moved that you're just speechless. Like, I cannot believe this man just did this. Like, this is why we work with him like this. This is why we allow him to call us in the middle of the night and to, you know, let my Christmas tree turn into pine needles on the floor and, you know, a dried out branch, because I'm getting the opportunity to witness such magic.
That's a great story. I love that story. Susan Rogers went to Los Angeles. You'll be there for 2 weeks after Christmas. Comes back in like June.
Months later.
Tree is now a Memorial Day tree. You know, it's just
there's so many great stories like that.
Yeah, the things like that I love hearing this stuff. And the fun thing to me is people like Susan Rogers, who she even says it was a joy. Even though she worked harder than she's ever worked, she looked forward to every session. What's he going to do today? And up until he did, Adonis and Bathsheba, she thought every song was amazing. And then hearing that story is fun to me because some people love the song, some people don't, but she's laughing during it. And then you hear Eric Leeds talking about it, where Prince was, once he knew that Susan Rogers was saying, I don't really like this song, he started telling Eric Leeds, that's some of my deepest lyrics ever, you know, and he was over like making sure he knew that, no, this is good. And there's another story that I love involving Eric, where Wendy was playing bass on something. And I don't mind telling these stories, because if you're going to read the book, you'll read the book. But it's she's playing bass on something, and she and Lisa left, and Eric said, boy, Wendy really plays bass. I don't think he said boy, but, you know, he said, you know, Wendy plays bass pretty amazing. And Prince said, mute her bass line, and they muted it, and he says, grab me the bass, and he sits there going doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and does this amazing bass roll, and then he goes, we don't need that. Well, the other one's good enough. But it's like almost he had to show, she's good, but let the master play.
Yeah.
And you go, when the maestro gets out there and plays, no one's going to be better. But he had to still show them that. And I think that's interesting to know that this guy who we all think is the best still at times had to show, let me show you how it works. And I think that to me is hearing those kind of stories makes him human to me. And I enjoy the human side of him as well as the icon side. I mean, the icon side is what we all fell in love with. The human side to me makes him more endearing. It makes his story resonate because I can relate to heartbreak and loss and love and the newness of a relationship. And I often think that his album, sometimes will come out with a project and he won't finish it. And I equate that to being like in a relationship. When you first start dating somebody, everything's great. And you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing. I want this all the time. But then it starts to go away and you go, I'm not as interested. I'm going to just, and I think that he has a lot of projects that he fell in love with that he kind of just, it fell out of love.
Or lost interest.
Distracted.
Yeah.
Got distracted. Squirrel, and
shiny new toy syndrome.
Shiny new toy, exactly. And I think that happened a lot. And so that's why we have a lot of great unfinished projects in his projects as offers. But that's also why I think Welcome to America, to go full circle, is because of that. It was a project that he did and got complete and then walked away from. And I think that what's great to me is hearing Morris talking about this and hearing Shelby talk about this and the people that were there, listen to the Prince podcast because it's got so many people, and Dr. Cornel West talking about this. It's great. I love that stuff. And Andrea Swenson does such a good job with those things. So,
I mean, Duane, one of the things.
Dwayne, would you ever consider to have a cleaned up version of 83 First? I would love that. I think it'd be great. I think right now we're all waiting for see what happens with the Netflix thing. We're all waiting for that they announced. I don't know what's going on with that, so I'm excited to see what happens with that. I'm hoping that they use all that footage and things like that. But First Avenue stuff is great. By the way, if you ever get to Minneapolis, take a tour of First Avenue. It's so cool to go there and go there during the day, and you can see, you walk in there, you stay on the stage, and you go, oh my God, this is where history happened. It's something, it smells and it's good.
What would be great is a First Avenue DVD of all the Prince performances.
Box set of all those things.
I'm just putting that out there. So I
agree.
Yeah, I have a question from DJ UMB who sent it to me previously. It's long, so I'm going to have to ask it in 3 parts because it's 3 different questions. And DJ UMB says, firstly, thank you for the book. It's an incredible work, and I really respect the time and research you put into it.
Let's just stop it there. Let's just stop right there. Then. I think we can end this program.
We're good right there.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
All right. So all of these questions are related to Dream Factory. So just so you can get ready, Dream Factory. Number 1, is this alleged album a myth, a distorted false narrative created by well-intentioned enthusiasts? I guess I should ask all 3 so you can get more context.
Okay.
Is this alleged album a myth, a distorted false narrative created by well-intentioned enthusiastic fans? It is suggested that tapes were leaked, but what is the original source for those leaks? What is the evidence that Dream Factory existed as an album rather than just an assembly of songs or a play/musical or as a concept of sorts?
Well, Prince is always so good about explaining everything he did to all of us. He always laid out exactly what his plan was. Always very good about that. Making sure never changed his mind, never did anything like that. He did. I mean, I think the thing I would say about it being an alleged album or an album is he did do several versions of this, and to put them all together in a way that the next one was just a morph of that one, and the next was just a morph of that one, to me shows that he had some sort of concept about this. Artwork was created, things like that. That said, does that mean that it was what he wanted to release? Apparently not. But he did go through several versions of this thing that were just variations. If he was just compiling songs, just to compile songs to listen to in his car, which is he did all the time, he probably wouldn't have gone back to that almost exact track list, but he would listen to it, perfect it, shape it a little bit until he had what was the Dream Factory thing that was later. I think his intention was to put that out. That's my guess. But he did. The book is filled with albums he did that he never came out with. So Jill Jones got a whole nother album of stuff that early on that they did that before the album that came out. Not the Madhouse, because that came out, but the Flesh, things like that. There's all kinds of stuff that he did. But art was the Flesh. The Flesh was a title he used for a lot of things. He even used the title of the Flesh when he was doing Crystal Ball at times. There was a few paperwork I saw that said the Flesh was the name, was the band for Crystal Ball or for Camille. Camille was an album that he put together. Camille then morphed into Crystal Ball. Crystal Ball was also called Camille. It's like he would have these nebulous ideas. All of November of '86 is him trying to find a package of all the songs he did. First, it was Camille, and that was great. I love the Camille album. To me, I think the Camille would be a great record store day or something like that.
Oh, totally.
But somebody asked me why that wasn't on the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe, and I thought, well, 7 of the 8 songs you have, why you can just put them in your order? What 7 or 8 songs on the album would you not have to put that onto its own disc?
The edits.
Yeah, well, okay. There's completists. I understand. I get it. I like that you real quiet. But there are completists that want that stuff. I agree. That's not my favorite album. I get that. Now you've thrown me. What was I saying?
Right. With Camille.
November '86. He was looking for a project at that time. This is long after Dream Factory, but he was not even knowing the name or the concept. So he would do this with projects, and Crystal Ball ended up becoming Sign of the Times. But it's the same thing as Dream Factory. He would do something, put it together, go, yeah, these work together well. How can I get these? We record another song, add that to it, take this song out, maybe shuffle this here. Okay, now I've got that. So I think Dream Factory was a project he was working on. It probably started off as a That's funny.
Thank you.
That's very funny. Very funny. Any idea how the tapes for Dream Factory were leaked? No. I mean, the stories are that he would leave them in
Oh, I do.
in cars. Oh, you do? Okay, Ricky.
I have a theory. Well, I think you mentioned the book that he would give cassettes to people and he like throw them in the backseat of the car or something. I'm sure at some point when they took the car to get cleaned.
Oh, that's the story I was going to say. Yeah.
Like some worker was there and was like, hey, yeah, they're cleaning Prince's car again. Now, who among us, if you were cleaning Prince's car and you saw some tapes in the back, would not 5-finger discount the tape? You're not going to take the change in the dash. You could be like, wait a minute, it's like some cassettes here. You're going to take, whatever's listed on it. And each time they kept taking the car back, somebody kept taking the tape. That's
well, I think he would also give tapes to people. He'd say, he's trying to impress a woman or, and
he was mailing things back and forth. I mean, to London and Paris. And
exactly. So things are going to, the more cassettes you make, the more likely things are going to be to get out. So I think that's happens. There are track listings of the Dream Factory that have been written out in people's handwriting from that time period that says side 1, side 2, side 3, side 4. So it was a concept he thought about, but again, he was always throwing noodles up against the wall to see what stuck. And I think that was just, one. And if the Revolution had stuck together, Dream Factory in some form might have come out. I don't know.
Well, I think, I just think, there's been this rising narrative that's unfortunate where, some of the newer fans, who perhaps weren't privy to what was out there, like I was saying before, when he was here, people believe, all of these stories are just completely made up because he's not here to debate them. But a lot of this stuff was already out there. Everybody knew about, the strange work relationships and disagreements on credits and things of that nature. And I think that there's a growing narrative of just, a lot of what the Revolution says is untrue. And so people think that perhaps Dream Factory is their way of saying that, you know, he wasn't really ready to go completely solo and put out, you know, Sign of the Times, and he should have held on to working with them longer. But I think, like you said, it's just that he changed his mind a lot. I think that he...
Well, there's one thing that's consistent with Prince is change, period. You're going to have... the Prince at the beginning is not the Prince at the end. The Prince at the beginning of a tour is not the Prince at the end of the tour. The shows are different. It's just, you got to go in this expecting change, whether it's, and I think with him getting rid of the Revolution, which I love the Revolution personally, but without that, you would never have had the things that happened afterwards.
Right.
Different
and
path,
that's what I keep telling people.
And you wouldn't have Sign of the Times. You wouldn't have had all these things. And so there's a reason. I used to watch a show called 24. 24 was a great show. But they would occasionally kill off somebody that's a major character. And you're going, oh my God, if they're going to kill off Jack Bauer's wife, anything is possible. I think the same thing with Prince is at any point, it sounds awful, but you're expendable. At any point, you are, it's something that's more. Morris Hayes was fired a couple times, came back each time. That's just what happens. Sometimes Prince says, you know what? I'm done with you for this project. You're on hiatus. They bring somebody back. It's up to his whim. Whatever he wanted. If you were in the room, that's what happened. And if you weren't in the room, it's because he didn't need you in the room. And
plus I think. Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was wrapping up. So.
No, I was just gonna say. I think plus to Miss TLC's point, I know these narratives where like she's saying people are kind of like believing these things. You got to look at who's saying the narrative. Of course, the Revolution is going to speak well of their era. So they're going to celebrate and champion their era. The Sign of the Times, Love Sexy Band, they're going to champion their era. I'm sure, like if it came out that there was the Black Album, like Love Sexy, and then something else, then we'd be on that. Like the NPG, the first incarnation, they're going to champion their era. Like no one is going to speak bad about their era and then say, well, like this, that, whatever. So. Like we've heard this Dream Factory narrative like so many times, like over the years, it's just morphed and morphed and morphed. And so it's kind of like, kind of like looking for the art.
I think you're right. I think real quick, I'm sorry, but it's like, it's the old back in my day type thing. Back in my day,
right?
Right. And the other thing, I think Des had said something one time that once you get off the bus, you don't always think about where the bus goes after that.
Right.
You're like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to, and I think that both Prince and the people that got off the bus may have paid attention, but not quite as detailed as when you're there. When you're in the room, it's the most important thing. I mean, remember Kat went up to Prince and said, no matter what, I'm going to be your best dancer. And Prince commented about that. It's like, I think by that point he was, Maite was in the band. He's like,
beat it.
And Kat's time was great with him. I love watching what Kat did. I'm not taking anything away from her at all. But I'm just saying, Prince would be like, no, I think, and again, this is me speculating, but it always seemed like Prince's current album was always his best thing. He would say that with every album he came out. This one is my authentic me. This is, I think David Bowie probably did the same thing. And I'm a big Bowie fan, but Bowie would change with each album. And Madonna changed with each album. And certain artists are able to do that. Some artists, you go, next album's going to be exactly the same way. The only difference is going to be you got rid of the lead singer, or he quit or went solo, and now you got a new lead singer. With Prince, it was always like each thing was his thing right then, and it was the most important thing, and he wanted to get this out immediately. If he could have had it out the next day after he recorded it, he would often try to.
Right, and I tell people all the time, I mean, we see how his moods could shift on a dime. And if that was the case, and he felt that everything that all of these previous collaborators and band members were saying, even, back in the 80s and 90s, as this was all transpiring, if he felt that they weren't up to snuff to work with him, he wouldn't have been continuing to work with all of them, and he kept those relationships going. Even much later in his career, he came back around and gave those members shine. And still, even Andre at one of D'Angelo's symposiums was saying how, a lot of people didn't realize that he was still running everything by him as well. And he was still, having him come to Paisley and having him weigh in on things. So, anybody that wants to paint this really, dark, negative narrative of like, all this is made up and these are just disgruntled ex-employees. It's like, no, obviously Prince saw that inspiration that came to pass when he was around that, group of musicians, and utilized that, to the best of his abilities. And they all learned from each other, and they all worked from each other. And there's nothing to degrade about,
There's a
times.
story. There's a story in the book that I found really touching. Is after Wendy and Lisa had left, they were invited to dinner, not for the breakup. That's a tough story, but I think around the 31-21 era, and they went out to dinner. They had dinner at his house, and at the end of the dinner, it was okay, but they went to another room where all these instruments were, and they started playing the stuff. And she said, I think Lisa said, "This is how we loved on each other. This is what we did. And we played it, and we were close then again." And I thought that, it's like all of a sudden their communication became that. And I think he communicated with people with music. If you communicate with music, you were in his circle. It's like, I'm a comic. My closest friends are all funny. You can be my great friend, but if you're not funny, you're probably not going to fit in that circle. And the same thing I think with music, with Prince, I think it's important. I think, what does Nisi say? I feel like session with
Andre isn't talked about enough.
Okay, I'll tell you about that one second then. But I think that you have to, he talked to people in music. And if he related to you in music, he's going to relate to you in music years later. He'd have Des come by or Brown Mark come by, and things like that. To me, I think that's really profound, that he would reach out to people or sing a tape to him and say, Andre, what do you think in this? And, he respected these people. Certain people he kept in his life, even over time, even if he wasn't playing with them. I think that's, or inviting Andre on stage to play with him. Inviting Bobby to play with him a few years before he died. That kind of stuff where you're just going, wow, that's, he did maintain some relationships.
They forged those emotional connections.
Yeah.
I think people tend to, sometimes we have this, or sometimes Prince fans have this thing that he's this like immaculate, say, conception.
Yeah. And
he was a person just like, say, the rest of us. And so we grew. Some of us are still friends with, people from high school. Some of us aren't. Like some of us are still friends with people from college. Okay, some of us aren't. And I think, just as a musician, all say musicians grow. You keep getting better.
I hope they do. Yeah.
And so whereas as fans, like we were invested in the camaraderie of what we saw or what we came into, like we wanted that to maintain. He kept growing, so he needed people to kept helping, kept feeding that growth. That didn't mean that they ended on bad terms and he didn't deal with them anymore. Right. Because like you said, like you're a comic, like you hang around comics. He is a musician. He hangs around like musicians, and they were just, like his friends / employees type deal. So he was always gonna unbeknownst to us, kind of reach back. I think whether we saw that or not. Just like Darla Nisi stated about the Andre thing, I had no clue that they were still hanging and jamming, but
fun.
It's refreshing to hear. It is.
The Andre, first off, Michael Dean, I don't do stand up now. I used to do stand up years ago, but I don't do it now. But Nisi had said, Kanisa had said, the session with Andre came back for several things, and they were just jams. That's sort of the fun to me, is that knowing that Andre would be playing with him and jamming with him. There's one thing that may have been a mistake in the book, where he talks about there was a story that Jody Watley had played with him, and I don't know if that's accurate. It was a Uptown magazine thing, and it's something that had gone on, and I thought I should have double checked that, because I don't think she played with that. I don't think Jody joined them in the studio. I thought I'd heard a tape of it, but I guess I was mistaken. But apparently, Andre did. Andre did play. The Bangles played with him. He'd bring different people into jam, and I think that's I think he enjoyed just jamming, and he'd bring people he knew. Again, if your friendship is based in music, you're going to bring people who musically you can talk to. There's a funny story in the book where Prince is talking about there should be a talk show called Drum Talk. Where two drummers sit there going, and the answer
just speaking riffs,
and that's how he thinks. But that to me shows that's exactly how he thinks. He's thinking in terms of how can musicians talk? Well, they talk with music, and so by him being in there, it's almost his social thing. Playing together for an hour or two is his way of saying, "How you doing? I'm doing great," and I think he kind of gets or got his his feel and things from people from that. And I think you could see it in, like I said, in the Blu-ray, you see his joy when he's sharing music and letting it out. And there's a part where during a middle part of the thing, who sings with him? They join him on stage with the Blu-ray. I'm drawing a blank on her name for a second. Lettucey, when she joins him on stage, and there's a part where she's like doing some stuff, and it brings the music down, so he's just going back with her, and it builds, and then and you see him take back in this thing, and it's like, it to me is his control over this, and you know that you can't watch this and not get goosebumps, because you just see that he's taken this thing, and she started going off on a riff, and he's playing with her, and he brings the band down. You see him telling the band, down, it's just me and her right now, and then they're going back and forth, flirting, and he just comes back in and just completely takes it back in his arms, and she wisely knows my time is done, and she puts the mic up and walks off on stage, brilliantly realizing, I've said what I had to say. Prince is now going to talk. and
it's the musician communication.
That's exactly right. Because understood, exactly. They had this understanding that, thank you very much. And he never says, you may go back to your seat now. She just knows instinctively, like, he's pulled the song back between, was a duet for a few seconds, and made it back in the band thing. Thank you very much for letting me shine for a little bit. I'll be over here watching the show. And that to me is his communication with these people. And I love that stuff. And that, I hope some of that comes out in the book, because that's really what these people had is a relationship with music. There's a story about Brown Mark writing Databank. And he's sitting there with the riff. And you know the riff because if you've ever watched some of the podcasts that's played, it's a great riff. And having him play it, and then Prince joins, and everybody starts piling in, and Prince then takes over the song. Still Brown Mark's riff, still Brown Mark's part, but Prince just says, "Okay, now let's communicate with this. Let's take this and put it through my factory, and put it through my Play-Doh thing, and push it through my Play-Doh symbols." And that's part of fun is seeing how he would take that and grow with that. Whether it's some of the songs he did with a band, whether it's songs he did by himself, I love that stuff. Those sly smiles and eye twinkles, joy. I can't find it. He is having a ball. I agree. He is. You see Prince's joy in this, and that's when I was as an editor for the concert. I got to see the angles that may not have gotten on the big screen, but it's times that you see his face. And my thought is because I was just again for full disclosure, I also edited the Sign of the Times concert. That was for the New Year's Eve thing for the box set, and worked on the 1999, less on the 1999 one, but I'm more on the Sign of the Times than this one. I always tried to find shots of his hands playing. As a musician, people would love that. Or see his face, see his close-up of his face singing or smiling or looking, giving somebody a look. Things like that to me were that reveal as much as you can. Lettucey. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. That it reveals so much when you see at that point he's in a state of joy, and he can't hide it. There's no way he's not that good of an actor that he can hide this joy that he's feeling on stage, and he's sharing that with his band. Usually he's facing the band when he does that stuff, and so when you get a chance to see that stuff, you're taken into the moment, and I love that.
So the last time we spoke for over 6 hours, and we have already gotten to our 2-hour mark. I can't believe it's been 2 hours already. And, I don't want to hold us here much longer, but I do have one question that I have to ask, a personal question that I personally want answered. But I've actually seen this come up on some of the message boards, so I know that I'm not the only person who wants an answer to this. So in the book, you talk about Betty Davis, but there are 2 different Betty Davises, and there's a Betty Davis with a Y, which is the Black Betty Davis who is married to Miles Davis, and then there's the actress Betty Davis, which is Bette, no I, Bette, Betty Davis, the actress. In the book, Lisa Coleman is quoted from Vibe from March 2009, and she basically says that Prince wanted sing like Betty Davis. So in the book, you have Betty, which is the Black Betty Davis, which is Miles Davis's wife. So but it's in context of
like the 40s and stuff, isn't it?
Okay.
Like,
the context is within All My Dreams.
yeah. So it's
I'm
probably
wondering,
supposed to be the E.
Is it the E? But at the same time, if you read the Beautiful Ones book, Princess Auto, like Betty Davis, Miles Davis's wife, the Black Betty Davis, is mentioned because Dan Piepenbrink says that Prince had actually shared Betty Davis with a friend because he wanted someone to. So like, I'm trying to figure out like which Betty Davis are we talking about?
Okay. This is a tricky one. I used whatever spelling it was in the article. I hope I did. I have to look that up.
You did. You actually did. I mean, because I checked it. Because that's.
Yeah, I don't think I changed the spelling, so I used whatever they had said.
Yeah.
I don't like to change the context or spelling.
Right. There's probably the vibe writer.
Yeah.
Who maybe
So
didn't clarify if they
I would ask them.
Betty
That would be the
Betty
person,
Y.
or ask Lisa, because
Right.
I did not make it my own thought. It was somebody else's thought. So I don't know.
Darlene Nisi, you said it was because I checked online and I could have sworn it was Y.
I'd have to look that up.
But actually, I think I didn't get the original article. I think you know how some people will copy and paste an article, like someone had copy and pasted that Vibe article, so they might have changed it, or like what do you call it?
Autocorrect, yeah, because sometimes that happens. Like autocorrect is used to
some of them may have looked at my book when they were proofreading and said this name is spelled wrong, and that's always possible too.
Right.
I honestly do not know, so I'd have to look that up and see. This is the part where I learned stuff.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, there's always going to be things that I don't know, and that would be especially when it's somebody else's quote. I try not to change what they were saying. So if I had changed the spelling, that's accidental. And I think there was some context. I did not know that. So I love this. This is when I get to learn something, because there's things I don't know.
I mean, obviously, I care about the typo because it happens all the time when it comes to Betty Davis, and it just infuriates me. However, I really want to know from Lisa, like which Betty Davis she was talking about. Now, I would assume it's the actress, because in the context of All My Dreams, like
it had that sound.
Sound. However, Prince listened to Betty Davis. So like I'm trying to figure out like the Black Betty Davis. I'm trying to figure out is that quote from the Vibe art. I guess I should maybe contact the Vibe author.
Well, here's the thing. Even then, you're going to go back one further, because you're going to say, okay, Lisa, no, but Lisa heard it from Prince. Prince didn't say Betty, Betee, or the Black Betty Davis. I don't think so I think we're all kind of now going back again. This is a great thing. They're all going back to it. All goes back to Prince, and whatever Prince was thinking at that moment. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about him with his black and white movies and watching stuff from the 40s that he probably at that time meant.
Right, and that's where the context was of this. It's a shame Prince didn't talk with subtitles. We could have known exactly what he was saying, but I don't know the
and thought bubbles. He needed thought bubbles to say what he was actually thinking when he said certain things.
And a picture of Black Betty Davis up there, exactly. Like that would have been very helpful.
The thing is, Betty Davis, the Black Betty Davis, and I'm just saying, I hate saying the Black Betty Davis.
I know.
I'm saying because you said it.
I have to distinguish it, because like there's like this confusion. Like sometimes even when you Google like Betty Davis, you see the white Betty.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's always the EY.
Like, that's a great point. That's a great point.
But Betty Davis, Miles Davis's ex-wife, her musical legacy is so darn important.
Yeah,
sure.
That if Prince, who I know listened to her because it's in the Beautiful Ones.
Right.
I just want to make sure that it's attributed correctly.
Right, and I guess would her, and I'm not as familiar with Miles Davis's wife's songs like that. Would her voice, would that be applicable to In All My Dreams?
It would not in terms of, but if you listen to the actress Betty Davis, if you listen to her sing, she has a very rough voice, kind of similar to Betty Davis, like the Miles Davis. So like in terms of their voices, they're kind of similar because neither of them are super sweet. So
that's a great question. That's a great question.
I wonder if like when Lisa responded to that, like even though she might have been responding to All My Dreams. I can't remember the context. It was in the Vibe article. Like that Prince saying that could not have been attributed to All My Dreams. It could have been like a totally different. And maybe Lisa misinterpreted. Like I don't know. Like
this is all the mystery, and this is again this is the nice thing about when the fact that now you have that article where it came from. You can look that up and figure that out. But it's tough. It's tough trying to understand everything that these people said. And I'm trying to listen. If Lisa would have
comment, that's so true.
Said, you just,
he'll probably play like a game. Well,
that's
which
great.
ones do you think would fit better in this song?
Yeah. Don't you like surprises? Exactly. So that he probably would have been vague on that even then, or he would have said, "Yeah, you decide this great one." But I don't know. Honestly, I would love to tell you, and I have no idea. And I'd be making things up if I tried to explain it. I don't know.
A lot of the basis of this conversation in general, and all the talk that we've all taken part in, just surrounding Prince and his work, is theoretical in nature, because you're taking these context clues and there's a lot of nuance for a lot of this. So it makes sense to like dig further, and if it opens doors to the discovery of other cultural references, then so be it, because that's what Prince actually wanted everyone to
the cool
do
thing to me is there's a lot of things like I did in music that I had not heard as much before. I'm a big fan of the funk, but there's things he references that I did not know. And so I go back and I listen to, oh, that's a great album by Sly Stone. Things like that I may not have. Santana, I may go, there's a part where I talk about the beginning to The Cross is similar to a Santana song. And I went back and listened to the very first studio and going, holy crap, they really are similar. And I think that was a comment somebody gave me. Or maybe even one I read on the org. I don't know. But sometimes you'll find these little things that somebody says and you go, I should investigate that, because as much as I know a fraction of what exists. And so it's things like this, when you guys ask questions like that open my eyes and make me enjoy the fact that I'm a bit of a sponge when it comes to this stuff, and love soaking this stuff like a biscuit in gravy. To me, I'm insatiable when it comes to this stuff. So I keep expanding what I know. I'll be this giant SpongeBob by the end. Full of gravy.
There are people who love Prince and feel like they've followed him for the bulk of their lives, but even they feel like just with his catalog alone, they may only know, a certain element from certain eras, and stuff like your book kind of presents it all in one place that they can go back and kind of search for some of this stuff.
I hope that, and some people have told me, and people that I respect, I see some of the people down below and things like that have said, I did not think of it like this. And I think that's one of the biggest compliments I could ever hear, is that somebody, after reading my book, and some of you guys are scholars beyond scholars, you guys know these things and can quote line and verse things. Prince nerds unite. Exactly. That's why we're here. Or we're nerding off. And I love it when people bring things. Edgar was on here earlier. Edgar helped proofread the book and would point out, well, and I can't do that accent, the Netherlands accent, but this is what happens here. And I would go, oh my gosh, you're right. Or add to it, he released 2 versions of this song right here. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I can only keep, as the older I get, the less space I have for extra stuff. And I will tell you, when in the time I'm doing this stuff, the book, I almost don't listen to anything other than Prince, with the exception of things that influence Prince. And even then, I only listen to that era. And so I really limit what I get, because what will happen is if I listen to other eras, I start to confuse things. But if I listen to this stuff in all this era, only almost exclusively for that 2-year period when I'm writing it, it's weird. And he thinks mine is actually weird too. So, but it's if I listen to things other than just that, I can start to hear patterns. You start to hear drum beats. You start to hear guitar work that is similar. And once you hear it in context, one person has taken the book and made a Spotify playlist of all the songs in the book. And I thought, that's great. That's great. To me, that's then taking it the next step and find that out. If you get that, share that with people, because that's part of the fun is people looking at, oh my gosh, this is how much he did during this period. And that's just what we've discovered. I guarantee there's probably stuff that I haven't even discovered, so.
When I read these type books, I only listen as I'm reading. I listen to the music from that era.
Yeah.
To kind of make it
good.
universal, give more. So like when I was reading the first one, I only was listening to. I mean, actually, it made me go back and pick up some stuff from '83, like '84, that I hadn't played like in a while. So, even with this one, it was a trip down memory lane, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about this, or I heard some things differently. I think at one point I queued up like Under the Cherry Moon. I know the movie just to hear the score.
Right.
Right. Like I know to
That's
kind of catch
cool.
some things.
There's a cool part of the score when the book talking about how he did the score is he copied sort of how Miles Davis did his score when he was scoring movies. So he just had the band playing and he'd say, okay, just go where this feels. And that to me is again, shows first off the respect he had for Miles Davis. I hope one of the things in this book comes off is the immense respect that Prince had for Miles Davis and the sadness that they didn't record more to me is because they could have done a whole album with Miles wanting Prince to produce an album for him and finding out that Prince said, nah, that blows my mind.
Right, because he felt bad to direct him.
To tell Miles Davis what to do.
Yeah.
But Miles Davis wanted him to tell him what to do.
I know, and the conversations with Eric about it.
Right, and Miles wouldn't have done something he didn't want to do. Miles is Miles. If he goes, that's not me, he wouldn't have done it. But if he's riffing with Prince and they're both musical geniuses and they come up with something that neither one expected, that would have been the best.
I think had they done something after the Madhouse stuff, it would have worked. I think pre-Madhouse, I don't know if Prince was ready. I mean, who am I to say? But I think that led him to get the Flesh stuff done, and then the Madhouse stuff, kind of build that confidence.
Well, just the nervousness that he didn't want to even send things back to him, and he's like checking with Eric, like, I don't know, would you send this to Miles? And he's like, no.
And how many times did Prince question himself? Going, oh, but yet he did that a little bit with Miles, going, that's not Prince,
right?
But to me, but that part of the fun of a book like this is because you go, oh, he was human, and I think that's the thing you walk away with this at the end of the book. You go, my wife told me, my wife is my best proofreader. She is what we refer to as a Prince widow. She enjoys Prince, but she's one of the people when I'll go up and nerd off to her and say, I found out the song Splash has this, and she goes, I'm glad you have friends. I'm glad you have friends you can talk to about this. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. But she reads the books from start to finish. And like Ricky was saying, the books can be read in two ways. They can be read for sessions, just go, what's my birthday? Oh, he did that day. Or start page 1, go to page 700, and you've got a story that hopefully tells a story through his music if you read it like that. So, but she reads it with the context of not always knowing who all the players are. So she'll tell me, I don't know who this person is. You've mentioned this fact more than once. You don't introduce this person properly. Why is this person important? Did they date? Did they, is this a man or a woman? So she'll be able to tell me this stuff. And I think that that's really helpful to me to put this in. But when she got to the end of the book, she cried. She actually cried. She said that she was moved because she knew she could see that Prince was hurt. And she said that brought a human side to him that she didn't expect. That this guy who we look at as being this icon, who infallible almost at times, would be at the end of the book. His band that he toured with is gone. His close friends are gone. The woman he was related, who was engaged to, is gone. The record company that had just come out with Purple Rain decided not to release the album that he was giving him. His movie had just bombed, and he basically was at a point and he wrote Wally, and Wally's a sad song. So you go, you realize this is a spot. But if there's a third book, which I hope there is, the third book is the redemption. The third book is to show that he was right. Mm-hmm. Look, this album's kick ass. Sign of the Times is a great album, and I do think Sign of the Times is better than Crystal Ball. The album would have been. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to have seen Crystal Ball the album because I want more. But I think Sign of the Times is really focused, and I like that.
It was compressed.
It was exactly, and I think I still like all the stuff on Crystal Ball. I'm not saying I didn't, but I think that Sign of the Times is such a strong album and very focused. But he came out and he said, "Look, okay, here's the fun thing to me was when he's doing Sign of the Times and the band and the Warner Brothers said, we don't like this. Take off 5, 6, 7 songs." He says, "Okay, I'll do that." oh, I'm going to add some more too. He's going to play some more.
Like, well, that's not part of the deal.
Yeah, that's Prince. He said, you know what? Great. Now, I think the thing I realized about some of the stuff, I think Michael Dean asked earlier, is what was I surprised about? I think the thing I was surprised about is how much he would process collecting to an album. He would do it, gather the stuff, and then do the songs like this and this and this, trying to figure out what worked for the album, and how he would leave great songs on the side because they didn't fit the vibe. That he would say, you know what, this song just doesn't fit. She's Always in My Hair does not fit on that album. Moonbeam Levels was tried on 1999.
Right, they said they kept
every
trying,
album until Sign of the Times. Moonbeam Levels kept trying. He kept saying, and it's a great song. And it's like, it just didn't fit any of these things. That to me is him saying, as an artist, this is my statement. It's not play this album for great hits. It's play this album for the experience. And I think that's the biggest surprise to me, is finding out that each one of his albums was formed, was crafted, was honed, was bonsai'd, all this stuff to make it this thing that we know now. And there's a reason behind every decision. And it wasn't just thrown together or wasn't tested with a crowd. It was tested to him, and he played it to friends, but not necessarily to have them say yes or no, just because he's proud of it. He's like, listen to this thing I did, show and tell. And I think that's the thing I learned a lot about him, is that each album is a story for him, and with a beginning, middle, and end. And I may not get it, but this is the story he wanted to tell. Yeah.
Edgar's comment about that some fans were sharing like bootleg compilations, because a lot of this stuff obviously wasn't ever officially released. And that actually is connected to a question I had for you. Did you ever think about, like, when you put the status on each song and you'll say, this particular song ended up never being released in his lifetime, did you ever think about perhaps like adding kind of like an asterisk of, but this is one that was popularly distributed amongst the fan base, or you don't want to get into like what's out there or not, like bootleg wise?
Because that's going to change. That's going to change over time.
Yeah.
And my thought is this is a book about Prince and his releases. It's not about, and the status. And then there's probably 5 guys who've heard this song that really enjoy it. I don't want to go, you start going in that area. It's
true. Then you start the battles too. If you're like, no one's really heard this, and then someone's like, I actually have it. And,
exactly. And so it's like, to me also, I got 700 pages, and I had to cut out 25,000 words out of this. So it's like, do I want to add that this has been bootlegged or something? No, but people that know it will know it. People that will seek it out. Sometimes stuff on YouTube and things like that. Sometimes it's collected and traded. I just didn't want to get into that. It's like, I really wanted this book to be about what he did and what his thoughts were on this stuff as much as possible. And I think that just goes into an area that I didn't want to wade into,
Ricky, did you have a final question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
No, just quickly, I was going to say someone you should try to get in contact with, just out of, personal confirmation, is Jody Watley, because when you made the comment about like there being a discrepancy of facts, interestingly enough, like Jill has talked about the situation where she opened for her, and Prince didn't like the way she was acting that day because she didn't really want to like dance it up to G-Spot, or she's said that in interviews before. And then someone recently brought that up online, and Jody actually like quote tweeted it and weighed in and was like, that never happened. And they said, oh, that's very interesting, because this story for a while that Jill opened for you. But I believe that Jill obviously knows what went down. I mean, she has
and
vibrant
memories change over time, and things like this. My goal is to make sure everything's as accurate as possible. And if I have a mistake in it, I try to make sure it's corrected. I've got probably 3 pages of typos that people have pointed out to me, and the album chart things. I think Mountains was, I listed as it went to number 3, and I think it went to number 23. So that was a little typo there and things like this. 25,000 words.
I'm just curious. Jody's general.
I would like to look at
her interactions with the entire Prince.
No, I'd really be curious about that. That's a good point. I mean, there's 250,000 words in the book, and odds are there's going to be an apostrophe occasionally wrong here. But I want to make sure that Jody Watley thing is accurate, because I know Andre has said to me since then that I don't think it's accurate, and so if it's not accurate, let's change it. I'm not going to be rigid about something that I wasn't there for. Absolutely. So I want to make it right. So. Ricky, you had a question?
I did. It was something Michael Dean said. He made a comment. He said, understanding the culture that like influences and shape Prince is important. And I think that is because, you know, back in the day when he wouldn't give interviews, you know, journalists would try to say his music or like guitar playing sounded like this.
Right.
And it wasn't until that 85 Rolling Stone like interview when he mentioned, no, you know, I kind of did Carlos Santana or
Right, I'm not like Hendrix. I'm like
right.
Right.
I mean, or like in the Crystal Ball liner notes when he talks about you know, like Make Your Mama Happy, like that was made off of Dare, off of listening to Sly Stone's Fresh. Those things are important because when you, I think, mentioned him kind of picking certain songs for say his projects, you know, like again, I think all too often some people think he's this like immaculate say conception of like an artist when he studied people. And so he studied how to, you know, put songs where they needed to be, you know, I think what songs worked. And as much as we would have loved to have had, you know, certain songs on all these projects,
Sure,
he knew, you know, like, nope, this isn't going to work. Like you said, like, you know, it would have been great to have like She's Always in My Hair, like, and Hello on like Around the World in a Day. But
See,
at that particular time, just like, no, it's not gonna work.
No, you're right. I think that's one of the things that's great is you can, if you are fans of that music, you can hear little references and little things. And even but it isn't just Prince that does that with other people. Listen to the Times, not the time, but Original Seven. They reference back to Time songs. So everybody that speaks in music has certain phrases they use, and there's drum fills and things like that that you go, oh, that's very Beatles-ish, or that's very whatever. There's a library of things that Prince went to, and he says he enjoyed anything from Fleetwood Mac to all these other bands. He's going to be, you know, I remember hearing Jerome talk about how the stations up there were very limited to what they played, and they'd stop at night. And he'd mentioned songs like "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald." I'm going, what the? You'd reference as you know, one of those songs you think, who knows that song? That's part of the rich tapestry of music up there. There's a blend of all these different things, and you get Sly in there, and you get Carlos Santana in there. And I think Prince was again a sponge, and he would just soak up whatever he could. He'd learn what he could from each person, and you can totally hear Carlos, and he could play Carlos as well as Carlos could play, and he could play Hendrix as well as Hendrix. That's what made him great, is that he could not only learn, mimic it, and then grow beyond that. He'd take that and do his Little Richard bigger, and just thought that's why we all gather in Minneapolis every year. That's why a week ago a bunch of us flew up to Minneapolis to hear an album played for us, you know, or to see a video on a big screen with a bunch of other knuckleheads that we know have the same passion as we do. Mm-hmm. This is what keeps us doing this every year. This is what makes magazines put him on the cover 5 years after he passes. This is why he's on the cover of drum magazines, guitar magazines, keyboard magazines, and bass player magazines. Because he's that guy. There's a reason we're all behind this. There's so few artists that have that, and he had this. It's you know, barrels of talent beyond most other people. There is nobody out there that had what he had. There's a reason we kept coming back, and there's a reason we'll keep coming back, and hopefully the next generation will keep coming back. Let's see. Great stuff from this afternoon. So glad I remember to tune in. Yes. Glad you tuned in too.
Yes. So Andrew has given us our chimes to wrap this up. I appreciate that. Yes. So we are here today because of this really brilliant book. And again, we want to support Duane so we can get the third book from him, which is really, really important to me and a lot of other people. So obviously we have 83 and 84. So I can't remember who it was.
On my shelf on the other side of the room.
Yeah, who was here in the beginning, who's actually midway through this book. That's fantastic. I think it's great that you're reading this first and that you will be on to the next one. And then for those of you who are actually in, in real time with us with your reading, hopefully you'll be back for 87, 88, or possibly 89. That's would be my vote. This is really, really important work, Duane, and I just want to thank you so much for doing the work. You are doing the work, and I know how hard you work on these books.
A lot. We know.
I know how much it takes away from your family. I know how it affects you physically. I know the stresses involved. This is not something you can just whip out do overnight. It is very well researched. It is very well documented and citations, and you have so many readers to try to catch all the errors. But even with a lot of readers, you still have errors. I just want to say thank you for doing all of this work.
It's an honor to do it. It's an honor that people want to read it. It feels like when the book comes out, it's almost like, to me, in my own small world, it's like when I used to go to the Harry Potter books when they'd be released, and you're excited that day when the book comes out. And I feel like that a little bit, and sometimes because people, when you write the first book I wrote it in a vacuum, and I had no idea. I thought 50 people want to read this thing, and then to find out people want to read this and made a brand out of it is so exciting, because you want to do something that lasts. And I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and she loves going to the bookstore and seeing the book on the shelf, and she loves seeing this. And there's a tiny part in here, real small, where I have her name in here, real small in here.
I love that.
And I have that on both books. My wife and daughter's name is really tiny in there. And it's so that my daughter will always see that. And I think that there's something fun about knowing this, and knowing that long after this generation of fans is gone, there's going to be things like this, and somebody's going to come back and write a better book and write a thicker book. But I love having a small part in this, and having people want to read it, because there's an arrogance when you write something that you think the world should read this, or the world should listen to the song. But when people come around and say, I did read it, and it touched me, and it meant something to me, it makes the pain in the arms, the lack of sleep, the stress, the age, the thousands of years of aging I've done, my poor back, my angry wife because I'm not around, my daughter who doesn't know who I am. It makes it all worth it. No, they're so supportive of this, and they know how much I love all of you, and how much I enjoy time with you. When we went to the thing, just to give you a little background, we went to the thing in Paisley Park a few days ago. I saw they're selling my books at Paisley Park. They actually have a shelf of my books. That's good. And I actually started crying. I almost started crying, because
to see the ultimate, validation of everything that you do.
It's Prince's home. It's Prince's home, and you go in there, and his home has your book. What the hell's up with that? How did that happen? And you sit there going, it's meant something to somebody. And I had a friend that I used to work with who just happened to be driving through Minneapolis and stopped in Paisley, and he sent me a picture just like 2 days ago of the books there, and he says, "What the hell's your book doing here?" I was like, "I know." I don't understand.
Well, that's a testament to the quality of your work. I mean, for those of us who live through that, like you mentioned, like their music takes us back to a time where, whether it's relationships, whether it's certain moments in your life. I mean, like D'Angelo and I's friendship was formed around this period, around like this music. So as I reminisce reading this, I remember the excitement of coming to school. Like, did you get this? And she already had it. Or have you heard this? And she already had it. Or like us being in the library like in the morning, and like we're reading a story that Prince did a gig, and Sting and Ron Wood were on stage with him doing Miss You, and like the little Rolling Stone thing, or like the like I guess surprise gigs at like First Avenue, or the little behind the scenes shots under the cherry moon. I mean, all that stuff. And so people have moments of their life around this period, and so you captured that, because it would have been cool to know that then, but it's even better to know it now.
Right. Yeah, as you're able to now look back. And I just want to also say, through this whole discussion, and just with everyone's discussions on their own time, just about, revisiting all of Prince's work, I loved in the book, how it was highlighted that he referenced to his songs as children. And if he would pull something out of the vault, he'd say, I need to give my children some life. Like, some of these kids got to get out here, you know? And I feel that it was the best way to describe it, because when you're going through these discussions over credit and who added this and who suggested to him to do that and who was jamming together on this, it is very relatable to that analogy, because it's kind of like the genetics that build a child into who they're going to be, personality wise, eye color, you know, their temperament. And it's like, those were the elements that he kind of sponged off of the people around him. And that's what made each of these individual children. So it's like, well, you know, the talent, the artistic side of this child was really because of something that I picked up on from Eric Leeds, or, you know, and that's really how people should look at it, that it's like, these discussions are living. It's something that should go on forever.
Absolutely.
As that child grows up, you know?
Right. And this is the thing that I love about this is, as we're talking, even the Betty Davis thing, we're all learning, and there's no way all of us to know everything. So we're all kind of open to these, and the people that have been helping with the research on this, Yost and Cam and Scott and Tom, everybody. Who am I missing? D? Am I missing somebody?
No, you got the core four. What
okay,
I call.
yeah, but these people, these are people that, look in the back of the book. You'll see that these are people I couldn't have done this book without them, and Edgar helped out, and
Pierre
Nelson, and Matthew B. Tone, who got Elton John for the forward. By the way, read the Elton John thing. If nothing else, read the Elton John thing. Screw my stuff. Read Elton John's thing if you want to understand. This is a guy who
how other legends saw him
is another on the same level as Prince. In fact, he sold more albums than Prince. But the stories about him meeting Prince and Prince dogging him out is so it's perfect. And that came in after the book was done, and you realize, oh my God, it fits in.
Yes,
the book.
Sets the tone.
Yeah, and Elton had read the book back in last fall. Before he decided, he yes, thank you, Edgar. Thank you, Andrew. But he had read the book. He got an early copy of the book, read it, approved it basically, and said, yes, I'll write the foreword for it. And so, I mean, I can't tell you how giddy I am looking at a book and seeing
your name and Elton's, yeah,
Elton John and me. I'm like, this is, something is wrong here. This should be it should be those two on the cover of the book, to have any sort of thing, even in the same breath, you know. It's just, it's mind blowing. So I've been a fan of Elton John's for years. I grew up listening to his stuff. I'm playing stuff for my daughter so she can get it. Playing stuff about Prince for my daughter, because I want the next generation to understand good music made by, you know, real music made by real musicians.
Yes.
And that was, both those guys are just up here. You know, so I could sit here and thank everybody for the rest of my life, but I could not.
You have more books to do it.
Exactly. I've got to get back to writing. You know?
Yes, because on behalf of Nicolay, Edgar, and say myself, we are the Madhouse aficionados. We really need that next era of, like, you know, 16 and 24. The first version. I know. So
there's a lot to be done with the third book would cover Sign of Times tour, Love Sexy recording, Love Sexy tour, Black album, release of Jill Jones album, Madhouse 16, Madhouse 24. What else is in there? There's some other stuff, but that's just that. Batman,
good question, maybe.
Yeah, but the good question. There's Madhouse definitely. There's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be covered. So it's like, there's so much to talk about. And I'll tell you that the interesting thing to me is going to be very tricky, because Susan Rogers only worked with him for the beginning part of 87 into like August or September. After that, it's every other engineer. She's gone. It's going to be, to me, like it was for Prince, not to make a comparison, but Prince no longer had his core band at the end of 86. Everything was basically new except for Matt Fink and Eric was in there. But so all this stuff is new. It's going to be the same thing for me for the next book, because the people I've been interviewing for the past book or two are no longer there. And I've got to now establish, and I've talked to Levi. Levi's great. We talked to Kat. Kat's fantastic. But I need to expand and get more of these people. Eric Leeds is going to be in the new book. Matt Bliston again. It's just, you know, you want to get these people. I wish Bonnie was still around, you know. There's
And
just
hopefully
so many people.
something works out that you do get to speak with Sheila.
There's
Like
so
you
many
said,
people
I
I want to talk with who? With who?
Sheila, like I was saying, that
I would love to
you're
speak to
grateful that you have the book and all these
I
other
would love to speak to
interviews.
Sheila.
But, yeah.
I would love to speak to Sheila. I would love to sit down and talk to Sheila. She's done a lot of great interviews, but it'd be fun to be able to say, just can I have an hour?
Mm-hmm.
Can I have an hour and talk to you and just get your take? Because she was the musical director of Side of the Times. Of
and
course you want to hear it.
Miko, you said
And
too.
Miko,
So
I please, I would love to have Miko attach this. Or if Miko wants to do an interview with Michael Dean or with you guys or something, please, let's get these stories out there, because the stories are going to go away eventually, and we don't know when somebody's going to end up when a story's going to end in mid-sentence, and we want to have all this stuff said, because I think we look at Prince's career and say he had more to say, and can't, and I want to know more, and I'm insatiable. I want to know.
Want to know everything.
Yeah, I do, and I want to hear everything. That's how it is. We all want to hear every note. That 5 seconds of the song that got edited out. That's the thing. That's the best part. I want to hear it. I will not rest until I hear that.
In this song, he said A, and in that song, he said the. So I want to hear the difference.
There's a funny part, and I know I don't want to extend this too long, but there's a funny part where Lisa's talking about recording a song, and she said she did the vocals for it, and she said, but I went up, and he got mad that I went up, and he said, you're supposed to go down there, and that's. We want to hear all the different. we want to hear this stuff. That's what we want. Let's see. What did the one say about Miko before that? I missed the one that said Miko.
Edgar was talking about that he's near Santiago.
I hope Miko talks. I love him. Miko and I communicate, but he just doesn't want to talk to. He doesn't want to answer questions or talk. Mm-hmm. And I hope he does, because he's a good guy. He's got great stories. He communicated with us when we did Uptown. He did some stuff for Pierre Nelson. I hope he comes out and talks, because it's sad that the legacy of Prince is going to be written without his part if he doesn't talk. And that's because he's got a big part of it, and all of us want to hear it. It's not like everybody's saying, let's ignore this. We all want to hear this.
Right.
So we're all encouraging, please, if you know Miko, if you talk to Miko, I hope he does talk. I really do. I love hearing Kat talk. I love hearing all these people talk. It's the best to me.
Yeah. I mean, it could be hard for him. I mean,
it might be. I don't know.
Right. It might be just a personal
It's his story.
Thing,
it's his story, and he can do everything he wants with it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't want it.
Yeah.
It just
could just be hard for him. But yeah, we do encourage that, though.
I hope. What?
I was like, yes, it's not. It's like, we definitely want it. So
yeah, we do. We're hungry. I hope he does. I hope, or he writes a book. I mean, I really hope he does. I mean, because these guys have stories to tell, and these are the stories that make us respect Prince more and enjoy more, and it makes the music that much more important and more intimate. And I think that's the bottom line. To me, I wrote a book that I wanted to read, and it makes Prince's music even more intimate. And that's the thing to me is intimate is the sharing of secrets. And I feel like I didn't realize how many secrets Prince was sharing with us. And the book kind of shows me that. So if that helps.
Well, hey.
So Ronnie's speaking for me. I will help with the next book. I will do anything you want me to do. I will read it every single
sexy super fan.
Yes. So anything I can do, I'm definitely down for that. Ricky, I'm sorry I cut you off, but I didn't want to.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna say, I hope the estate keeps being intimate and giving us things. And
are you guys happy with what the estate's been giving out for the most part, or the amount of stuff? I know it could always be different. But are they at least coming out with things that you're going, okay, there's stuff.
I think that as we referenced, this community is impossible to satisfy across the board. Yeah. So of course people are going to say, well, I want more. Well, I want this era. Well, I want that era. But when you compare it to what so many other estates have done, it's
Michael
like,
Jackson,
come on, we've gotten a lot. Like, keep it going. But, we are grateful for what's come out.
I mean, they have a lot to go through.
Yeah,
and
there's still
they have a lot to salvage, and they have a lot to fix and say. So I think I think everybody wants from For You to like the end. Like everybody wants that, and so
deluxe of everything.
Right, and so it's just a matter of being patient, because more than just wanting it. I think we want them done right. And then,
well, yeah, you'd rather have it right than right now.
right.
And
And,
Well,
makes
we
sense.
also want to be alive. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get that. Sorry, I understand
I mean,
that.
because and I'm actually not being funny about that. I really wish you hadn't asked this question because we were really trying to wrap it up. You had huge can of worms. So I am going to say this. So one thing that I've been having conversations about with you and anybody else who will listen to me is that I do think that there should be a different consideration for what I call the super fan, because there's so many incarnations of these box sets coming out, meaning you can buy like a 1-disc version or a 2-disc version, or super deluxe version, or what have you. There should be like a mega deluxe. And let me give you an example. So I'm a huge Lee Morgan fan. I don't know if you guys know who Lee Morgan
trumpet
is.
player.
As trumpeter, yes, he's my favorite. I know Miles is a lot, but Lee Morgan is my favorite.
Great documentary on Netflix about him.
Yes, an amazing documentary about Lee Morgan. On August 20th, there's going to be the complete Live at the Lighthouse release. On August 20th, it's going to be 12 LPs, 8 CDs of every single set he did at the Lighthouse. Nice. So 12 shows on these LPs. We could do something like that with the 21 nights at the, in LA. We could have every single show. When it comes to like having like a Love Sexy box, it could be like all the Love Sexy after shows.
Sure.
And again, that won't be for what I call like my mom. My mom doesn't listen
not
to
the casual.
Right.
Yeah. Not the casual fan.
Not the fans, but the fams.
Yes. I do think that sometimes that the box sets have been created for try to get everyone, meaning like try to satisfy the super fan as well as the casual fan. And I just think that sometimes there could be like a special limited edition box set that caters to what I call the super fan.
No, I get it. My question for you on the I forget his name, the trumpeter.
Lee Morgan.
Yeah.
How many Lee Morgan albums have come out over the past 2 or 3 years?
Not a lot.
Obviously, the answer to that question.
No, I don't. I don't know the answer to the question. I literally don't know. That's why I had to actually guess his name.
Well,
I don't know. There might have been other releases. I was a big fan of the Bird of Charlie Parker.
Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
You have certain things that would come out, and there would be a dry period, but then they come out with Bird and Diz or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you didn't know where this would come out, and the Bird and Diz had a bunch of extra stuff in it that was going. I never even knew this existed. Different takes of different songs. So I wasn't sure. My thought is glutting the market sometimes is a little tricky, and this is just me talking. You have an album like that, that's going to take care of you for a couple years potentially.
Yeah.
If the estate is coming out with something, a mega box, and then another release every year, they pretty much have, since he passed, has something like that for at least the past couple years. That's a lot of stuff. I don't agree with some people that are complaining that say you're putting out too much or it's too expensive. We're going to put out they're going to put out what they can put out as in as good a quality as possible. But I understand what you're saying, because I like to see they had the Miles, the full collection of whatever period it is. I enjoy that. Frank Sinatra did that.
Yes.
I like that sort of thing. So I agree with that. Often those are done long after almost everything else is out. And I think that I get that point. That's those people oftentimes are. It's very far down the career path. Yeah. Prince is still very relevant, and there's still a lot of things that just this product can be bigger. This product, and so it's a tough line to draw, and I don't know which one is the right one. I think it's kind of cool that they're coming out with a box set of each. They're going back to these albums, and it actually may be perfect, but I think it does kind of at least reflect. Here's a taste of what's there, and
well, we
I hope we want more. I
want more of the original series. The original series has to continue.
The original series too.
Yeah, your books that spoiled us, Duane. Because, it would have been great to get.
We want the Sonic equivalent of 700 pages.
Right.
Time.
Just imagine. man, like an 84 sessions book when you got like Purple Rain, like okay, Ice Cream Castles, Sheila's album, Apollonia 6, and then the B-sides and all, all the outsides. Like that would be a great, thing.
I agree.
So
I agree. I trust me, when I was writing these things, I was thinking, boy, this would be a great album. Boy, this would be a great collection, or a documentary about that period. So
I mean, plus I think, like I think if we're gonna celebrate the genius of what is Prince, then you gotta, include the other stuff of that particular era.
Absolutely, producer, because he was more than Prince.
I agree.
Right.
And I'm hoping that there's things that come out that showcase that stuff too. I mean, I love the originals thing. I love the fact that Welcome to America's come out again. Some people are loving it. Some people are like, To me, it's really good for what it is. I love hearing the different periods. There's so many things. Each person has their different favorite. I people that fight to the death that Controversy is their favorite album. People that fight to the death that each one. Well, that's what I'm saying is each one has a valid point, and there's no way to satisfy every Prince fan immediately. And so even with the books, people complain, why is he writing only about the 80s? Well, that's what I got. Right. That's what I've researched. But people said, I remember the first book came out, people were saying he's only writing about the 80s. I've written one book. So it's like not much I can do, and they take years to do. I want people to write these books. I want people to. I love that. Prince Paisley Park box set.
Yeah,
great.
Paisley Park box that we need.
Well, and that could be either the bands that were on the Paisley Park records or stuff he did live at Paisley Park. There's so many things there's so many projects. There's only so many hours in the day. And I would tell you, the people that work on these things for the estate are some of the hardest, most dedicated workers on this stuff. And they're committed to getting things as accurate as possible and as well done as possible. We're still 5 years out from him passing on. And we're still trying to not just as the estate, because I'm not speaking for the estate at all. I'm talking as fans. We're still trying to figure out everything about Prince. We're still finding interviews with him. And sometimes, someone will come out with an interview in 81 that he did with a French guy or whatever it is that you're going, oh my gosh, I've never heard that before. Or pictures and things like this. We're all still piecing it all together.
All right. And just think about how far we came though from our first conversation.
I agree. No, I agree.
When we were talking about the Purple Rain Deluxe, at that time. Think about everything we've gotten since then. So
that's incredible. So I have to break our regular schedule because Ricky has to leave. So I want to make him make sure he has his proper outro. Ricky, what you want to say?
Thank you, D'Angela. First of all, thanks. It's been great. Always a fun time talking with the fam. Man, keep up the good work. I mean, even if you don't do another book, which we all hope you do, you've done enough.
Book.
Yeah. And you are amongst friends that could help. So please.
Whenever you need them.
And the community is so good at helping. People transcribe and research. I list them all in here, but I am sure I missed people, even though I've got like 15, 20 pages of thank yous. I still bet I miss.
Yeah. So it's been a blast. It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed both books, man. And say again, much success to you, man. I know you've done a good job. Say, D'Angela, we go way back, and so you all have a great day. Purple fam. I will see y'all later.
Ricky.
Everyone be safe. Everyone have a great day. Okay, Miss TLC. I finally done a podcast with Miss TLC. I can stick that on. I want to say my resume now.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, you guys have a great day.
Yep. So as Ricky logs off, Ricky will be joining us for the Welcome to America virtual celebration on August 21st, as well as Miss TLC. So we are super excited.
I'll be there.
That's great. I'll be there. I'll watch it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, because I really want to say a lot about the Welcome to America, but I want to wait until.
That's what I figured. Yeah, we'll get into that deeper then.
One thing I will say to you, Duane, I think that it's one of the most beautiful box sets ever.
Matthew Bitone was the guy that helped create that, and it's beautiful. I agree with you, and having seen it as it's being done, it was. I was like, people are gonna like this, and I can tell you the work that went into gold foil and making sure that
love the gold foil.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
And the pictures, Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's a cohesive statement. All of it, everything.
It's a nice one, and seeing the little things, the tickets and the set list, and it's a poster. That's just fun stuff. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a K-tel, thing that's just a cardboard and the record slides out. I want to have an experience. And I used to sit there reading the liner notes of all these albums. Who produced this? Who played on this? I love that. Seeing who the engineer. Oh, this person engineered this thing too. What? And I always loved that. I would sit there with my beanbag chair watching this stuff. And it's just the fact that this is, have releases like this come out from a guy who's been gone for several years and still be surprising with new images and new things that you're going, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this. And I'm happy that people are responding well to it. Makes me happy. So thank you.
So I do want to get back to what Miss TLC said, because I cut you off and you were making such a brilliant point of the last time we spoke about Duane's book. In between that time,
what's come out since then?
Yeah, what's come out since then has been mind-boggling. So we should not be complaining, but we are, because we're Prince. Prince was so prolific.
And Prince was the same way, that he was never 100% satisfied, and he had to keep, re-editing and remixing. And
Somebody just said, I saw something on it might have been the org, which I try not to go too much, but I still go there. But there was somebody that just said, okay, I've heard this. What's next? I'm like, what's next? This came out hours ago. It took a long time to get this. I understand, but I agree. I understand. And now that I've heard this, I want to hear the next thing. I want to hear the next thing. I want to hear the next thing. So I get it. It's, and that's the same thing with the book. People said, okay, if somebody got the book and they said, I read it in 4 days. I'm like, now you got 3 years to wait. I spent more than 4 days writing it.
Right.
You ate the meal I prepared.
Yeah, it's a testament. Yeah, it's a testament to how interesting it is that people want to consume it so quickly, but then at the same time, you're like, well, I'm not ready with the next one.
Right.
Chill for a little bit.
I set a great buffet and you just ate everything real quick. And that's it. But you know what? I get it. I like I said, I wrote a book that I wanted to read, and I would be, if I was reading this, I'd be going, and I'd read it again. And I've had people come to me and say, I want to read more. I want to see more. I want to understand more. And like somebody just said, I didn't see who wrote it, but they said Prince did that to us. Prince made us like that. Prince got us to the point where we're hungry for several meals a day. so that's where it is. And I blame Prince for this.
He spoiled us.
As a fan of his music, and I like other music because there's other bands I like, but boy, did he take us on a ride. And it was a brilliant, joyful ride that, that we're still looking back and getting things on. And we're no longer to the point. It was always what's next for Prince. And now we have the opportunity to go back and say, what did he do? And we're starting to realize the chapters and verses and things that we may have ignored or missed because we were so overwhelmed with the things we were getting. And we always got something. There was always something, always a new tour, always a new look, a new store he did, whatever it was, a new article, new album, new single. There was always something, and that was a waterfall, and we had it.
No, go ahead.
No, we had it good. We had it really good, and I think most artists don't release a catalog like he does. I don't think there's many artists that have a catalog like Prince does. You look at the vault of Prince, and it's so mysterious and so big, and you think in terms of how many bands have that. I mean, the Rolling Stones, but the Beatles. But you look at the catalog and think, oh my gosh, all the things that are in there. And I think Prince is one of those exclusive guys that you just look at and go, I don't know. It's so mysterious. And I think that's and we're all mega fans, and there's things that we don't understand.
Nisi said, #blame Prince. That'll be our new thing.
True.
It's like if a Paramore was buying you, amazing gifts over and over and over again, there is a point where then you just expect them. Like, sorry, it's like, I know you just bought me a diamond ring. Now I want a car. I know you just brought me a car. Now buy me a house. Like, hello.
Right. Yes.
It's your fault. You just keep buying me so many amazing things.
All right.
It's your fault.
I have a couple more questions that I want to get in.
Sure.
For Mel Smith, will the book be translated into different languages?
We're talking about that right now. We've had some interest from France. I want to say Germany, and I think Russian. I think either that or Japanese. There's been people reaching out to the publisher. I don't have a say in that, but I would love to look on a shelf and see, Le Prince, or something like that. It would be fun to me. And I'm not talking about Troy's, thing, because
Yes.
that's great too. But it would be fun to see another thing. I don't know how I couldn't proofread it. I'd have to rely on that and hope that they didn't use Google Translate, because Google Translate isn't always that great. But there's talk about it, so I would love that. So
the other question is from DJ UMB. Duane, do you have plans to write a book on another artist?
Oh, that's interesting.
No. I don't have time. I would. There's other artists I would love to. I'm a big fan of Bowie. I would love to write something about Bowie, but I don't. I'd have to be starting from scratch. This is 20 years to get to where I am. I'd have to step back, and also I would have to delay book 3 and book 4 or any other books. That's what I thought. There's none of that. So I don't. Prince is the one I've done the deep dive into. The other ones I more go into the book and find a book and enjoy that by reading it. I would love to see books like this about Elton John. I'd love to see books like this about other bands, but will I be doing them? Probably not. I don't
you have such a rich baseline, like I'm saying.
I do. I'm you're right about what you know.
You're already in the scene. You already know.
Seriously, write about what you know, and I know this. So it's like, okay, I already have been doing the research and already been doing the work. So book 4, bring it on. Book 3 first. I still haven't come out of the paper.
So I have a comment about book 5. No.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Thomas is questioning 20 years.
30 years in the future, I'm sure. What was 20 years meaning? 30 plus. Well, I was doing the book. I guess the first book I started doing in the late 80s, early 90s, when we started doing Uptown. So yeah, and Thomas knows about that. We were doing Uptown magazine when I started talking about doing this book. So, but I wasn't like I wrote it every day. It's not like I sit there going, every day I got to write this book. It was, you go through periods and a couple months off. And toward the last year or two, I just, my wife said to me, is this going to be a hobby, an expensive hobby, or is this you're going to actually make a book out of this? And I was like, you're right. And so I took, I finally sat down for about a month and a half and just finished it. And then that was in March of 2016 that I got that finished. And then he passed away a month later. But I wrote it with the idea that he could read it out of respect and love, that if he would read it, that he wouldn't sue me and that he would enjoy it. And so that's why I wrote that. I don't know whether he would have, but I wrote it so he could enjoy it. So
I really do want to get to the end because we need to move our bodies.
Yes, I'm cramping.
Time, but we are here for Duane Tudahl and this really thick book, 700 plus pages. You can order it from DuaneTudahl.com, or you can go to wherever your book, your
beautiful cover.
Yes,
Thank
beautiful,
you.
beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
If you want a signed copy of it, you can go to DuaneTudahl.com. I personalize it. I was numbering them, but I stopped the numbering a certain number, so I'm still signing them. There are signed books at Paisley Park. All the books there are signed by me, just not personalized, just signed. And also at Electric Fetus, I signed a stack of books there. So if you're in Minneapolis, it's a good place for it. You can order it from Amazon, order from anywhere you want. But if you order through my book on my website, you get that. You get the bookmark and things like that. Yep, that's exactly. You got the book. Exactly.
You got book. You got book.
So you can do that, and I may start selling those books again, signed. I stopped doing this for a little bit because I'm doing the trying to focus on that one. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. So yeah,
thank you for this time.
There. Thank you, man. This is so much. I've been waiting for this one for a while. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and I want to make sure you guys got the book.
Actually, I wanted people to read the book.
Yes.
So like sometimes I feel that these conversations happen.
Yeah.
And also, I want this book to still be on the lips of a lot of people. So I purposely wanted to do this later than a lot of the other conversations that you had, because it takes a while to really get through this.
Digest.
Yeah, you have to marinate on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dee, you wrote a really nice review on Amazon. I want to thank you for that, because you wrote a very, very sweet review. It really touched me. I will tell people, I read all the reviews on Amazon. When you do write a review on Amazon, it is so helpful, because what happens, I get emails from Amazon that says, would you like to read this book? Like they're trying to sell me my book. And at first I was like, what the heck is that? And then I realized I'm happy they're doing this, because that means they're doing this to other people. And if they get more good reviews, great reviews, they will promote it. They push it. And if that's a way to get the book out there. So when people do this, one person wrote a 1-star review that said, I'm mad at Amazon because my daughter, it's so easy to click on. My daughter, my 1-year-old daughter accidentally clicked on this. I'm like, well, don't give me a 1-star review because of that.
Yeah.
You know, but people have been so
It's not
kind.
my fault your
It's not my
1-year-old
fault.
daughter has really great
She's a
musical
genius. 1-year-old daughter's a genius. Exactly. But people have been very kind and very heartfelt. And it does, you know, it's nice to know that something like this made a difference to people. And it makes me feel like I can do another book when I get this. And also it makes the publisher realize, you know, we should really, really go in that
There's
direction.
an audience for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll tell you, when the publisher first learned about this book, they did not think it would sell that much. I mean, obviously they thought it would sell a little bit, but they didn't understand it, and they didn't know how to promote it. They didn't understand. I kept telling them, the Prince fans that will want this thing will find it, and they will come around for it, and they will know what they want. And if they're not happy, they will not buy it. But if they're happy, they'll make sure that they get 2 copies, one for their friend and one for the friend they're trying to
given them as
convince.
gifts.
There you are. See, and I have to admit, this is one of those books that you don't want to have in the library. It's good to have in the library, but you want to own, because I find it to be a reference guide. I use it as a reference guide. You know, whereas certain books I get from the library because I'll read them and then I'm done. This book I have on my shelf because I go, what was that? Oh yeah, I remember that now. And I think that's part of the fun. Or now I've heard a different song. I wonder if Duane mentioned that earlier. Oh, he did. Or he didn't. I need to write him an angry email about this. So,
Yes,
so that's.
yes. I call this a living book. Like you literally will live with this book for the rest of your life.
Wow.
So, no, I know I will.
Thank you.
I will. So I do want to mention a couple of really quick things. I know we've been here for a very long time, but since we have both Edgar and DJ UMB in the audience, they've been doing this amazing series on Twitter called the Prince Twitter thread. And we just wrapped one up for Jill Jones. And the reason why I say we, because Miss TLC, as well as myself, were part of the really amazing, incredible team for the Jill Jones Twitter thread, because
everyone was so good. Yeah.
It was great.
Yes.
It was great.
And also Jill Jones herself actually participated, which was incredible. And I believe in giving Jill Jones her flowers now.
Now.
Yeah, now. We love Jill Jones. So I want to make sure that I shout that out. But if you're really enjoying reading this book, the next Prince Twitter thread that they're going to do is going to be for the family. So if you know anything about Parade, you know there's someone called Claire Fisher. Claire Fisher is all throughout Parade. So if you enjoy Claire Fisher, you will enjoy the family thread. So DJ UMB and Edgar will announce that at some point, but I just thought it would be really great for all the Parade Claire Fisher fans in the house. If you're not on Twitter, you might actually want to go to Twitter just to, read the threads, because they've been pretty incredible. So I just have to say that. And I do want to say, yes, give Jill her flowers now. It's really important. And I want to give some shout outs to Jill in case someone sees this and tells her that more people, like, we love Jill. So we just want to make sure.
I love this stuff. This is the thing that's fun is I love the fact that the fans want to give back to the people that gave to them. There's so many people that love people like Jill and the family and things like this. There's so much love to be had in this community, and it's just nice. And I love this stuff. And the Jill Jones thing was great. Those tweets were so many good pieces to those things. I love that.
It was a lot to take in. It was nice to see everybody's personal feelings, personal interpretations, and then just all the details, and then how it was all concluded with the way that Jill kind of tied it all together and gave the backstory into where she was at that time.
I hope what they're doing the family. I hope they do something where they talk to get Paul and Susanna and things like that to comment on this, because to me, part of the fun was having Jill say, "Oh my gosh," and feel like you said, give her the flowers while she still can enjoy the smell. That's the thing, and yeah, you want that sort of thing. So that's great. I love that.
So I cannot leave without talking about Princeversaries, because I feel like that's where it all started, with a lot of amazing people like Darlene Nisi, those Twitter threads. But for me, the OG is Princeversaries. So we have Miss TLC right here with us. So it would be very disrespectful not to acknowledge the incredible work that she's put into her Princeversaries. So you should also check that out on Twitter. So, like, if you're not on Twitter, that's where I personally like to hang out.
Yeah,
Facebook
that's always been my.
But Twitter is kind of where I like to live, because of Miss TLC, because of Darlene Nisi, even though Darlene puts a lot of stuff on Facebook. But
Thank you. But we can all relate on different levels. I mean, the amount of work that you put into the symposiums, the amount of work that Duane's put into these books, like, we all get it, that there is so much of it that it's just a labor of love. And there's, so many times that I was working for hours and hours and hours to connect the dots and put together these threads. And then, unfortunately, with the way Twitter is, they'll take things down if you had, links to certain recordings. So I had to revamp a lot of stuff and try to come up with new ways of doing it without the music, which is frustrating because we're all just trying to educate people and to entertain people. But at the end of the day, we're just grateful that it's received in this way and that there's so much, positive reinforcement.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, it's time to go eat something, because I'm getting hungry personally. I want to thank each and every person that's out there in the audience, all of the wonderful comments, all of the wonderful questions. I hope that you will definitely read this book. It is really important. And also buy copies for your friends, because we want to make this very successful so that we can get book 3, which is really important. And also book 4 is going to be pretty darn important too. So we really want to spread the word about how incredible this book is, because it is, in my opinion, I said this when this came out, this is the only Prince book you need. Now, these are the only 2 Prince books you need as far as I'm concerned. And I am waiting for that 3rd book where it's going to be a triple threat.
Okay. I may be slightly grayer by the time the 3rd book comes out, but I'm working on it. I've already started.
And we'll be back here to talk.
Yes,
absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Hours. Yes.
I'll have another shelf full of books. I'll have another shelf of books there. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
And I hope that I'll see you guys at the Welcome to America virtual celebration. I'm super excited. Oh, one thing I should announce, if you go to the website, one thing that's not on there, I am adding one more roundtable with the UK posse. So we're going to have
that's great.
European take. So we're going to actually start at 10 a.m. as opposed to noon to accommodate the time zone there. So over the weekend, I'll add that. So I'm super excited. I hope that you are too. So that if we only touched on Welcome to America today, because we knew that we had this full day coming of programming. So thank you again, Duane, for your time.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you
for your time. Thank you, Ricky, as always. And I hope everyone has a great day. You can read Duane's book while listening to Welcome to America. That's what I do. Yes. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.